Ladies and gentlemen, a very warm welcome back into the 321 Dome here in Hudayrat Island, Abu Dhabi. We have spent the morning at the pool, but now we are back inside with 4 workouts still to come. It is myself. We've got Elite 15 athlete Kate Davey. We have got Coach Ed Haynes, our commentator extraordinaire, Jeremy Austin, and of course, Brian Friend here to go through all of the action. And down on the floor, we have Mike Halpin, Mike Bourne, and Jane Ergbacher. What a team it is, and we are set to bring you every inch of the action. Now, let's take a little look at what is coming up this afternoon, because it's going to look a little bit different from yesterday.
Event 1 of day 2 at the Crucible will start here on the platform. Athletes will have 90 seconds to find a 7-rep front squat. Now, there are a couple of tricky rules that we need to understand here. Athletes will have 1 attempt at doing 7 unbroken repetitions. If they complete the 7 repetitions, then their set is done. They may not increase the load and have another attempt. Also, if the athlete does not get to 7 reps, they will still have a score, but their score will simply be the number of repetitions multiplied by the load that they lift. Now, one thing you might see is if at any point while the athlete is moving through those 7 front squats, they drop the bar, they may bring the bar back up to the rack, but they will have to start the 7 reps from rep 1 once again. Other than that, athletes will come on the platform, they will declare their load to the judge right away, and then they will follow the standard rules of the front squat. Bar must be in the front rack position, and we must see the hip crease pass below the knee. They must then return to full extension at the top for the rep to be credited.
So next up we have the pull-ups, and much like yesterday with the dips, it's 3 minutes and it is max reps. So with the standards on this, it's 5 kilos for the ladies and it's 10 for the men. At the bottom, you must be fully locked out. Your then chin has to pass over the top of the bar and your feet have to remain underneath your body on the whole way up of your rep. So it's going to be really, really strict. I think we're going to see a lot of no reps or strategic repping. So I think we might see a lot of people just doing 1 rep at a time, but I think it's going to be really, really exciting to watch.
This event is a 20-minute max watts test. What that means is the athlete needs to cycle for 20 minutes and their score will be their average watts across the 20 minutes. This is a really common test in the cycling world and it's known as the FTP, Functional Threshold Power. So what we're going to be seeing here is we're going to see the athletes have to go out hard and hold on. This is the ultimate test of aerobic capacity.
Immediately following the 20-minute bike watt test, the athletes will have a 15-minute window to take on the final test of Crucible 2026. Another barbell, and this time a 5-rep max strict press. In talking with the head judges, they expect this to be the movement that is the most challenging for the athletes to meet the standards. In every single rep, there can be no movement in the lower body or in the shoulder. Any lean back will immediately result in a no rep. Once the bar is initiated in the upward position, if it starts moving back down, that rep will not count. At the top position, we're looking for a stacked wrist over shoulder as a clear indication of completing the press and bringing it back down below the chin to establish the finishing movement before starting another rep. If you want to be the ultimate athlete, you have to have the strength, you have to have the capacity, and you have to adhere to the standards.
And standards we need, the standards we've seen over the course of the last day and a bit. Our female leaderboard for our elites. Provisionally, Astrid Tind on top of the leaderboard, equal with Jamie Simmons, but with a tiebreak, just sneaking ahead. Emily DeRoy jumping into 3rd after a great swim. Jess Towle jumping into 4th after a great swim as well.
Yeah, 3 points, 1 through 3, 4 points, 4 through 6, 31 points between the top 6. It's going to be a battle for the top spots.
Talking to Emily DeRoy, she said a couple of the events coming up, including the pull-ups and the strict press, were going to be favourites of hers. How does it balance out? How do we find the ultimate athlete? We've only got 4 tests remaining. Our first is our front squat. We've been through the requirements, and this is going to be a tough one.
I mean, we saw this morning that in one test alone, so much can change. We have another test here that's completely different. We saw a big variance in the deadlift yesterday. I think we'll see huge variance in terms of top to bottom load lifted on the front squat as well.
Not far away from getting started from our first heats. inside the 3-2-1 dome, as Lauren Smith alluded to earlier on. A great facility here in Abu Dhabi. And 7 reps required, but there's a whole lot of strategy that's been going on in the days and weeks before to work out exactly the best way to do it.
Yeah, it's a very similar start to they had yesterday. They have a 90-second interval and a mandated number of reps to achieve. If you don't complete the 7 reps, you're not disqualified, but you have to meet a minimum load for your average reps that you do complete. When we see only 1 attempt required here, and so Angela Hill here is now going to have to, she only got 6 reps, but because she had enough weight on the bar, she's still going to meet that minimum. It'll hurt her for not getting that last rep on the leaderboard, but she will be able to advance to the next station.
Correct me if I'm wrong, she could re-rack this bar and attempt her 7 reps again, or not?
Incorrect. I know it said that in the preview, but it's 1 attempt on the front squat, just as it was 1 attempt on the deadlift. They will have multiple attempts once they get to the strict press, which is the final barbell movement.
Very strict requirements right across the Crucible. Not just the qualifiers yesterday, but the finals today. And Angela Hill, a very good swim. Let's break that down with Lauren Smith and the team.
Thanks, Jeremy. Angela Hill missing her final rep, Kate. That must be so frustrating for her.
Yeah, and not quite enough time to then re-rack and try again, because I do believe that you can do that. And also that would probably hurt to do another 7 on top of that. Probably wouldn't achieve it. So, yeah, that will hurt her, but, you know, she does get through. At least it's not a DNF.
Now, as an athlete, how do you recenter yourself after a disappointment like that?
Move on straight away, get your head exactly where you need it to be. You need to just, you can't change it. So you have to just move on, and you can't let it affect your next exercise, because you've got to hit your reps on the next one. So
Ed, I think we saw the first instance into what strategy can do. So she went high, she went for that 90 kilos, but it didn't pay off.
Yeah, so she started right at the beginning of the time, which is exactly what you want to do. The thing is, with the deadlift yesterday, athletes had a chance to actually let that bar rest on the floor, recuperate, recover before hitting the next rep. Front squat's different. You're under load from rep 1, so there really is no resting point once that bar leaves the rack. And so that makes it a very different test to the deadlift. And what we will say, one little change there, is that the athlete is still credited with a score. What we're simply doing is multiplying the reps she completed, which was 6, times the load that she lifted. So she still gets a score, and because she was lifting pretty big weight, that might actually still not be too damaging. That's the advantage. You take the risk, even if you miss a rep, you still might get a decent score on the leaderboard. I don't think it's going to be enough to compete with the top dogs, but you still get a rep.
Well, we see it right there. It is not quite enough, but she will take second place in that heat, and off the back of a great swim, that might serve her in the wider state of competition as we look ahead to what's to come, the pull-ups.
Important loading, important reps to get through, as it seemed alluded to. Angela Hill leaving a little bit out there on the floor. We saw it yesterday with the deadlift, and just those fractional plates, how they come into play, and just putting yourself in a better placement on the leaderboard.
Yeah, and so, you know, that's a very different score than we're going to see on the pull-ups, which is for reps. But since she had the heaviest load on the board, they took the 90 kilos that she loaded, divided by 7, and then multiplied by the 6 reps that she got. That's where you get the 77 and change, and still good enough for second in the heat, because the total amount of work she did was still impressive with the heaviest barbell out there.
And very similar to what we saw yesterday in the qualifiers. On day number 1, we go from a heavy strength movement into a loaded gymnastics movement. Exactly the same today. How much fatigue's on board?
It's interesting. It's the same rest interval, 3.5 minutes from the lift to the strict gymnastics movement. But the front squat is 1 set. It's less reps, so it takes less time. So most of the athletes were done with 30 seconds to spare, whether they got 6 or 7. So you actually have 4 minutes now to prep for this. And it's kind of daunting to think about, because the strict standard of this movement is something that's definitely weighing in the athletes' minds.
Something we went through with the head judging staff yesterday.
And when we say went through, we all got up there and tried.
We went through the ringer with them, and there was a lot of no reps coming out of the team. I'm talking about myself. I'm still yet to get one. 2 standard, that is. Well, we moved from our front squat where you've got that 90 seconds, but you don't want to be under tension for that 90 seconds. The deadlift, you had a little bit of leeway where you could dump the bar to the floor and continue on. But this weighted pull-up, this is going to be something else. Ladies underway.
So one of the main things that we're looking for here is actually the foot position. We've talked about the strict nature of the lower body in the dip yesterday. We will also have that with the strict press later on. Here, if the entirety of the foot drifts in front of the hips or out from underneath the body at any point on the way up, then that rep will not count. Of course, we need to see the chin clear the bar. The rep actually doesn't count until you reestablish a hanging position at the bottom. However, the strictness of the lower body is removed after chin clears the bar.
Jen James with no shoes on, trying to lessen the body weight. But that's a good strategy. You want to get as light as possible. We've seen that yesterday with the dips. Athletes changing shoes from deadlift to the dips. We've seen it again. But how much time are you going to have between now and getting onto the bike to go through that change of footwear?
And really nice shot there of Magomedova. She's looking at her judge prior to starting to make sure she's in a good neutral position. And then she's on the way up having her foot drift in front of the bar and getting the no rep for it. So all the aspects we were talking about, a beautiful display here. Now in lane 7, we'll watch Jen James, and you can really see there at the finish position, she goes back to that dead hang, perfectly still body, looks at the judge, got credit for the rep, and as Kate Davey predicted, singles and making sure that everyone counts is what Jen James is all about right here.
Over the halfway point of our first heat, this is our second workout of the afternoon inside the dome. First in the pool earlier on, moving on to the 7-rep front squat. Max weighted pull-ups. They will move on to the very grueling 20-minute watt test. Is that in the back of their mind for those that are not looking forward to it right now, or are they just focused primarily here?
It's crazy. Whether the athletes love the 20-minute bike test or are concerned about it, it is in everyone's mind for sure. However, during this 3-minute interval, I think this is probably the 3 minutes you're thinking about it the least, because there's so many other details to pay attention to. Once that 3-minute buzzer hits, it's right back to the forefront.
I reckon you're in one of two camps. You're either loving this bike test or you're not.
Definitely. And it's there either way. But so is the strict press. And if you love that biker, you're going to have to push the pace. But what's the cost on the back end? If you don't love it, you can meet the minimum and try to excel on the strict press. So I think we'll see a variety of different strategies with the latter two tests of this quadruplet.
Monica Polak being very specific on the eccentric load and the position at the bottom and not dropping until that judge says good rep.
Yeah, you have to do that. I mean, can you imagine doing the totality of the pull-up and then just coming off a fraction of a second earlier and missing out on that rep? And don't forget that they have the weight hanging between their legs also. So making sure every effort counts is well worth it.
One thing we didn't go through yesterday was doing it with a loaded plate and having that movement as well. So something we can practice later on. 2 down, 2 to come. Time frame is about to extend. And let's head over to the studio.
Cheers, Jeremy. Kate, Jen James is doing exactly what you predicted earlier on today. Can you talk us through what you were seeing and why it was so effective?
So she was doing single reps, and I think as we saw on the dips yesterday, that was actually quite beneficial because each time she wasn't getting no rep for swinging. So instead of risking that second rep and swinging through the rep, she was coming back, just resting her arms, then coming back onto the bar, making sure she was completely still, getting the rep, getting a clean rep, resting again, rather than if you get that second rep and your feet come too far forward, it just means you're going to have wasted the energy on a no rep. And they are being so strict. We saw on a few of the other ladies there that there's no room for your feet to go forward at all. And the other thing is, it's a little bit harder because when you are coming back onto the bar, for the ladies who are having to use the step, it's only fractional, but they'll be under tension for that little bit longer than a guy maybe that could just reach up and hang on to the bar. They have to then move across. They've got that fraction of a second and the extra swing, so they have to steady themselves.
Well, we'll be looking out for that in our next heat as women as we head back to commentary for the FTP test. Oof.
Thanks, Lauren. And I'm actually not even going to guess. I'm going to expect that anxiety levels have just risen significantly.
Well, you heard Lauren say FTP test. That stands for Functional Threshold Performance, and that is intimidating just in itself. 20 minutes on this bike. It's the cool thing about this test is anybody could do it. You could get on a bike anywhere in the world, ride for 20 minutes, check what your average wattage is. These women have a totally different thing in mind because they're the first heat of several that are going to come, and they know that the effort they put forth here is also going to dictate what those later heats do.
Only 4 athletes in our first heat of the afternoon. Through 2 workouts already, 2 more to come. And signifying on the left-hand side of your screen at the top, how much time the athletes have got remaining, and to the left, their average wattage. And we have got some stipulations on the wattage as well.
Yeah, ultimately the minimums here, I don't think they're going to be an issue, as we see the lowest being 136 right now. 100 is the minimum the women have to maintain to be able to advance to the strict press.
And thinking more and talking more about that average wattage, let's head down to the floor with Jane Urbacher, who has got way more info than we can provide.
I am so excited about this event, and the reason I'm so excited is because it's such a general event that we actually see worldwide. So people have the opportunity while they're watching this to compare the time and the result here to something that they might actually be able to do. So what I am wanting to draw attention to right now is the damper setting selection here. So on the side of the actual dial, we have the adjustment of the damper setting, okay? And what we're seeing is a complete variation here. We've got a 6, we've got an 8, and we're also seeing some people up out of the saddle, which is going to test those quads. So I could talk about damper setting all day, which I'm not going to, but that's just a little insight. We're seeing a huge variance on it.
And Jane, with that, we talk about out of the saddle, and we see that a lot in cycling races like the Tour de France and that sort of thing. How much benefit are they going to get from getting out of the saddle? Obviously, their feet aren't locked in.
On the bike erg, they are going to get maybe 1% benefit over a very short duration. And the reason for that is you'll notice that the athletes do not have their feet clipped in. And that is a huge difference between what's happening on the bike erg right now and what we would see a cyclist doing out there on the road or on a bike with cleats there. So what we're seeing here with our hips out of the saddle is we are seeing a complete dependence on the concentric contraction of the quads, which means the hamstrings are not coming into it at all. Whereas if the feet were clipped in, we'd see a push-pull, a simultaneous push-pull. So we definitely want to be seated for this effort here because we actually want to be using our quads and our hamstrings simultaneously on that push-pull.
Jane, if I'm a female athlete out there and I know that 200 average over the course of 20 minutes is something that I'm shooting for, do I need to maintain that 200 throughout the entirety of the 20 minutes?
No, you do not need to hold it exactly on 200, but what you need to do is make sure your live pace averages out to be over 200. So if we look in at some of the pacing of the athletes right now, what we're going to see is the big number on the screen is their live pace. So that is the watts they're holding at that exact moment in time, whereas the average watts is the number that is the most beneficial. And that's taking into account all the work that's been done up until this point in time. For accuracy when it comes to average, what we actually need to do is program the monitor so the monitor knows how long this is supposed to be. So the absolute important number here is the average pace rather than the live score.
Thanks, Jane. So much more info to come over the course of the 20 minutes, not just for this heat, but for the 9 following. And Brian, the difficult thing about this is you're stagnant for 20 minutes. We've seen this in Dubai Fitness Challenge a couple of years ago, and that was probably the most spectacular view anyone's ever worked out in.
It's now, a nice facility here, but it's a little different.
Yes, it is. But you look, the athletes are actually looking at a big screen with the timer on it and seeing it count down. And could it be any worse?
I mean, I'm just watching here. We've had Monica on the screen for a while, and she's looking very relaxed early on and just kind of settling into a pace. Typically over a 20-minute effort, eventually you're going to get to a point where it hurts, but you know it's not going to hurt any more in the body, and it's in the mind where you have to win the battle. So breaking down this, and you've seen this previously just down the road for the Dubai Fitness Championship, and is it a matter of breaking down 5-minute segments, or do you break it down more? Do you break it down at 10 minutes? What's the sort of mental process you go through as an athlete? And you've spoken to a lot of athletes who've done this.
I think that
Similar to some of the stuff actually we saw with the dips, with big sets, big rests compared to small sets, small rests, but keeping that consistency over time. Knowing what style of athlete you are plays a big factor into how you approach a 20-minute consistent effort. Jane was referencing it that overall it's the average that we need to be as high as possible. Some of the athletes may stand up, put a little effort, drive that up in the live score for a bit, and then back off. Others may choose to crescendo and build throughout the entire interval. You know, I think Monica's probably one of those athletes. She hasn't been, in my view, hasn't been starting overly aggressively, but I think she will have a finishing kick.
And averaging currently 2:05. And you mentioned she's not pushing, doesn't seem to be pushing that hard. But
Well, it just looks like she's in control.
Yes, but she's pushing that 2:05, which is a good tally to hit.
It's a good tally. It appears to be very good relative to this heat. When we think back to the test that we had 14 months ago in Dubai, 287 was the winning score. So that's a long way off from 205. I think, having done this test a few times, that if you can hold 205 consistently for the first 3 quarters of this, and then build into the last 5 minutes, that you can actually drive that number up potentially 10 to 20 average watts in the last quarter of the test.
How late is too late to push?
I mean, again, it depends on that strategy. If you're going for kind of peaks and valleys, it's a little bit different. But I think in the case of someone like Monica that we've seen kind of get to a threshold and maintain it, I'm going to be looking for her when we get somewhere between 7 and 5 minutes remaining to start to build into a stronger finish.
Asia Magomedova, 189 average watts. And it's been interesting to note the averages from our 4 women in heat number 1. The averages haven't really changed much.
Now, they all seem like there was a little bit of jostling early on, but they've all sort of settled into a rhythm. Jane's obviously out there on the floor, and I'm curious if she's noticing anything from a breathing pattern with the 4 women we have out there.
Here is definitely not expending as much energy out here, but I would like to draw attention to the cadence here. So in the cycling world, when you do this test, what you'd actually be looking for, the optimal number for your RPM, so revolutions per minute, would be between 85 and 95. And you're actually going to see all of these athletes are sitting below that right now. Jen is the closest to it. She might even be there right now. But we're seeing a very low leg speed, and it's more like a grind. So what we're seeing from these athletes is less aerobic and more of a muscular endurance. And that's going to be a problem coming into 20 minutes of this. 20 minutes is a really long time. So they're simulating a climb right now where they don't necessarily need that. So we want to keep those legs light and fast. And so the damper setting selection can come into that. So we don't want it to be a grind. We want it to be light and fast and stay aerobic.
And just do want to clarify that the 150 average watt is the minimum for the women. So we see Jen James there at 158, who is still clear of that threshold. I believe I misspoke earlier and said 100. 150 being the minimum that the women need to maintain over the 20 minutes to advance to the strict press.
Yes, that's the minimum they have to hold. So these guys are all safe right now, but to be excellent in this event, what we would love to see is something well over that 200 mark.
Our host, Lauren Smith, going through some testing yesterday, and it was a tough old 20 minutes.
Yeah, I think that's an understatement, Jeremy, and I was nowhere near the 200 mark either. But I'm really glad I got a taste of exactly what these ladies are going to be going through. And I did try to stick to Jane's advice of between that 85 and 95 RPM. And let me tell you, it's not that simple.
I guess I'll be leaving that FTP test to you.
Well, she may not have been close to 200. She was also well clear of 150. Right in the middle there, a very respectable effort.
Coming up to the halfway points. And this is where that fatigue over the course of the last 24 hours. It was a short day yesterday, yes, but it was a grueling 15, 20 minutes.
Yeah, and actually, you know, one thing that haven't spoken about yet is the seat position. You can have the seat a little lower, which would favor the quads a little more, have it a little higher, and recruit the hamstrings a little bit more. What we saw yesterday was a big demand on the posterior chain. So if athletes may be, if they're feeling that in the hamstrings or the low back after the deadlift and the run yesterday, they may be opting to have 1 or 2 clicks lower on the seat and recruit the quads a little bit more than they would want to favor the the hamstrings due to that fatigue from yesterday.
One of the interesting points that Jane spoke to us about yesterday was foot position and where your toes should be pointed when you're getting onto a bike and where your seat is situated. And there's so many variables to that. Jane, I know you spoke to me yesterday about it, but that toe position is probably one of the most crucial points.
It is absolutely a crucial point. And the reason for that is with all biomechanics, so effective movement, we're always looking for angles, and the ergs are no different. So when we're watching somebody on an erg or on a bike, we're actually looking for optimal angles. So if we look at their foot on the bike, and I talked about this before with the difference in having your foot clipped in or not clipped in, what we actually need to see is a very slight plantar flexion, which I have no doubt Ed is going to go into lots of detail later. But what that means is a very slight pointed toe. And the reason for that is when we point our toes slightly on the push, on the down phase, on the pull, our heel is actually lifted and we recruit those hamstrings. And so the magic for a cyclist on a test like this would be sharing the load. And if we look at all four of these athletes right now, we're noticing a bit more of a seesaw movement of their foot, which demonstrates that they're not actually getting that hamstring recruitment when they're on the bike here. So we are often seeing a big push down kind of with the heel or the whole foot. What we would actually like to see is a slight pointed toe, and that's going to really mimic how the foot moves with cleats on.
We actually see here, as Jane was going through that explanation, that Jen James' average watts is slowly ticking up, while Monica Paulek's are slowly ticking down. And so Jen may be approaching this from a steady increasing perspective. And I'm curious to see if this kind of regression for Monica is something she's able to rebound from in that last 5 minutes, as I was hoping to see.
And that's exactly what I'm looking at as well, because one thing we're definitely noticing with Jen here, she has kept her cadence higher. Her damper is the lowest, so it's somewhere about a 3. She's definitely kept her cadence higher, which means that her body is able to clear that lactate a little bit more. She's staying more aerobic. What we're seeing with that slower cadence and that heavier grind is we're seeing those muscles fill with that lactate. And unless the athletes have really, really worked at that lactate clearing, worked on that threshold training, we're going to see that cost more and more as the time goes on.
7.5 minutes remaining. And this is that tough period where you've just got to grind and battle through. It's not going to get any better, but it's not going to get any worse either.
Yeah, well, you could make it get worse.
You could.
But yeah, I think you were asking how do you break this down, and certainly one way to do it is into thirds. I'm going to kind of establish something in the first third. I'm going to adjust in the middle third as I need to. I'm going to push as I can in the last third. And I think at this point here, with 7 minutes to go, is the opportunity for the athletes to dig in a little bit. Curious to see the look over the shoulder there for Monica. Wonder what she's looking at. But I think you got to kind of get into your own rhythm here for the last 7 minutes and ask yourself how bad you want it.
This morning when I was by the pool and I spoke to Vadim, it was really interesting to hear how he had prepared for the swim. And one of the things that he said was that he knew this event was coming up, and so he trained specifically for it. And so these athletes have known for a really long time they're doing a 20-minute test here. And something I found really interesting was how each of them approached the bike at the start, which was great. They set it up exactly for their body. They adjusted the damper, which demonstrates that they've been working towards this event. They knew what was coming. They knew what was expected. And watching them now with their consistency on the watts, I would assume the exact same thing. I think that they've gone into this with a game plan, and I think that's what we're going to actually see throughout the rest of the day.
Jane, you mentioned these athletes knew what was coming. How do they sit and strategize and plan and practice this, and how many times do they practice it?
Yeah, absolutely. So when we are looking at something like this, we would be practicing this. So it's a benchmark test. So you see it in the cycling world that people would do this and then they would do their intervals based off the time they get for this. So based off the watts they get for this, they would actually start to program their training around that. And so these athletes, if they knew for 9 months, they should really have been retesting this every 6 weeks. So that's what we'd want to see. We'd want to see them setting a benchmark as soon as they knew that this event was a part of it. And then we'd want to see them retesting every 6 weeks and progressively getting better. And it will actually transfer to all aerobic capacity, not just this exact test.
All right, I've got some work to do.
Set a benchmark, and we'll see you back on the bike in 6 weeks.
Thanks, Jane.
I was just checking in with the results for these 4 women from the previous 2 stations, because obviously this is the 3rd thing that they've done now, and there's still 1 more to go. And as we get into the later heats, the scoring and the jostling on the leaderboard is going to change dramatically. just with these 4 women, the order on the front squats, we had a 1, 2, 3, 4, and if you correlate that with the pull-up, it was 3, 4, 2, 1, almost exactly inverted. And keep in mind that we're looking for the best performer across all 4. And so when you're approaching this bike individually, as daunting as it may seem, you also have to recognize that it is only one of 8 scores. And if you're not the best at it, like I said a little bit earlier, you can lay off a little potentially if you know that you can maybe finish the way you started this 4 workout set with a good movement on the strength.
Asia Magomedova, the results currently down the bottom of your screen. That RPM is an interesting one. Looks like that damper is set at about 8, which is extremely high.
Yeah, that's that grindiness that Jane was referring to earlier, and you're kind of maybe getting more out of each pedal, but it's a lot more effort per pedal. And I think talking to majority of the athletes, that over the course of 20 minutes, 5 and 6 is sort of in the middle where we'll see a lot of them settle.
And don't forget, this isn't the end of their day. They've got more to come. They've got 15 minutes to get through a shoulder press, which is coming very quickly. They've got 15 minutes, yes, to do 5 reps, but now the strategy is, do you absolutely bury yourself in this to then recover for maybe 5, 6, 7 minutes, and then give yourself about half the time frame on the final workout of the day?
Yeah, when I first saw the flow of how, seeing the workouts is one thing. Understanding the flow is completely different. And 20 minutes ends, a 15-minute window begins. You said it's only 5 reps, but watching athletes do this in the past, having done this myself, in that first 5 minutes, you're not going to want to do anything except for try to figure out a way to make your legs feel better. And while, yes, practicing the 20-minute test, and maybe in a 6-week interval, is great, if you haven't practiced what it feels like to suffer in the last few minutes here, beat the legs down, and then figure out what you can do to get those legs back under you to get a solid strict press on the board. Obviously, it's a shoulder-demanding movement, but the lower body needs to be involved and engaged as well. So you have to find the trick to get back on your feet.
2.5 minutes remaining now. And Monica continuing now, starting to up the ante back to that 2:05. She held for almost 10, 12 minutes.
And I think that in this last 2 minutes, if she's able to push her, she'll end up above the 2:05 mark. Jen James, in the meantime, continuing to tick up by 1. She was all the way down at 158, and she's slowly climbing up towards 165.
RPM continues to rise and fall. We talked about mountains and valleys and the fluctuation right across, but maintaining a good average pace is going to just benefit you so much at the end of the 20 minutes.
Yeah, and she's got the RPMs, much higher, 12 to 15 RPMs higher than we saw from Monica earlier, from Magomedova earlier, but her damper setting's a little bit lower, which allows her to spin the bike a little bit faster. And now her pace is really starting to push. So we're approaching 90 seconds, and she just dropped from a 156, 157 to a 146, 147 pace.
And now having to maintain this all the way through to the finish. Normally when you get to that minute 20, you can possibly hold on for that long, much more than that. I'm not sure you could do that post 18.5 minutes of work.
Angela told us this morning, as the winner of this heat in the swim, just keep swimming, just keep swimming. This is the point where you got to find that little short mantra that works for you and convince yourself, I can do this for 60 seconds, 90 seconds, 2 minutes, whatever the remaining time interval is.
And less than 60 seconds now before we wrap things up for the second last workouts for these athletes in heat number 1. "15 minutes to come of a 5-rep max strict press. And that won't be far away. And a challenging last test for these athletes. And this workout period today has almost doubled what they had yesterday.
And we get to see Angela Hill here. She's getting her entire body into this rocking back and forth, trying to drive with as much momentum as possible. She's been kind of holding the second position throughout this heat. Paulek driving up at the end, and she's doing it with a little lower damper and even a faster revolution.
Final seconds tick away for our first heat of women for the Crucible Finals, day number 2, and that one stings. Let's head over to the studio team and hear what they have to say about that one.
I think stings is exactly the word, Jeremy. Having done this yesterday, that last minute is hell on earth. But look, we saw, Ed, a difference between seated and standing. What's your take on that? Is there one better than the other?
Yeah, great question. So we did see one of our athletes, moving to the standing position midway through. Now, what I will say is that there's not necessarily a right or wrong when it comes to the bike erg, seated versus standing, but we need to understand the differences between the two. Now, what Jane highlighted when she was breaking this stuff down, and she is an absolute wizard when it comes to understanding the bike erg, is that when we're in that seated position, we want to be using both the quads and the hamstrings. The quads are responsible for pushing down on the pedal, and then the hamstrings are responsible for pulling that and returning back to the top. Now, the thing is, when you stand, a lot of athletes move to standing position to try to give their legs a break. And what they do by moving to standing position is they actually load the quads more. And the quads being the primary drive in the bike erg, it feels temporarily like it's a break because we often see the cadence pick up. But the only thing is when you're standing, because all the weight is through the handlebars and going to the quads, the hamstrings now cannot work. So the idea of unloading the quads, giving ourselves a break by standing, actually just makes the quads work even harder. So ideally what we want for the majority of this test, other than the start and the finish, is to actually be in the seated position where we're actually finding that nice even balance between quads in the push down and the hamstrings in the recovery part of the cycle.
Honestly, I think that's why Magomedova doing that whole thing standing was so impressive. Although it didn't actually pay off in terms of her average wattage. We take a little look at the overall leaderboard. It puts her in third, but Monica Paulak, she looked very in control. She also had a great opening workout out on the floor. But 210 watts, Kate, can you give us a little bit of context as to how good that is?
That's very good. That's really, really impressive. And seeing as the men have to hold over 200, that just shows what a phenomenal performance that was for her. And it's going to be interesting to see how quickly they do move onto the strict press. Especially with their legs feeling a little bit shaky, you need a really, really solid base. And if there's any movement, they're going to get no reps. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting.
Thanks, Kate. At 2.5 minutes in already, and the first loading has started. No lifting as yet.
Well, they had to lift the bar up there to begin with. But no, the strict press is the movement of the entirety of the test of the Crucible this year that when I met with the head judge yesterday, he said is probably going to be the most difficult for the most athletes. First of all, coming off of the back of everything else they've done, including that bike test, but also because there's a demand from head to toe about the standards that need to be met in order to do this. Now we're going to see the first athlete go for a set of 5 here. He's just going to give us an example of what clean reps look like.
It's not just a matter of getting that bar unracked 5 reps and dumping it on the floor. So the athletes have got to go through that process of re-racking the bar. The score they will get will be the previous weight they lifted successfully.
Correct. And so the choice here for Monica was get a lift on the board. Warm up the movement pattern. She's got plenty of time left. She's already logged a score, and now she can start to feel into her potential in the remaining time.
Now, it's obviously going to depend athlete to athlete. Fatigue levels are going to fluctuate. How many sets are you doing in 15 minutes?
I'm not entirely sure, and I think that may depend on the overall exertion level from the previous. Also, where you are on the leaderboard. Whenever you get to the final workout of a competition, there's a lot of different variables in play. If athletes are perceptive here and kind of know where they fall on the money or on the podium or in the championship race, they might have to take some different risks. I would say in this format, you need to get a safe lift, and then you probably want to see 2 to 3 attempts as you work towards a max.
Loading has got to be specific in order to get not just a score on the board, but a competitive score throughout our 5 heats of our females. More on our loading. Let's head down to Mike Bourne.
Yes, I'm just down here on the floor with these girls working through their strict press. Now, the thing that's been noticeable for me is coming off that bike is preparing themselves for the lift and how they're loading the bar. So the girls took a decent amount of break first before they even attempted to pick up an empty bar and start pressing because those legs are feeling heavy, those legs are feeling like jelly. And I've even seen some of the girls do a quick small set and then sit back down on the floor to get their recovery even better. So we're starting off with light loads, getting a score on the board, and then obviously as the time goes by, they'll go for those heavier attempts.
Thanks, Mike. And recovery, imperative. And the athletes have still got 10 minutes. It's not a major rush, and that's something we're not used to seeing in competition, especially after the first 24 hours, where they've been constrained by 90 seconds to get load or to get reps completed.
Yeah, completely different strength test in that regard here, where there was a fixed time domain and one attempt. Now they have a big time domain, or I should have said a small time domain and one attempt, a big time domain, multiple attempts. And as we're getting into the perceptively heavier loads, what we're looking for is no movement from the lower body, no lean back in the shoulders, wrist over shoulder at the finishing position, demonstrate control with a dead stop below the chin before you go into the next rep. And after your 5th rep, you must bring it back to the front rack and rack it for the entire rep or set to count.
Judging standards have been very strict, but very good right throughout the qualifying aspects of the Crucible and for the finals. And technique is going to be individualized as well.
Yeah, and we see right here, she's choosing to bring it back down and receive it with her whole body, and then she stands back up and reestablishes that beginning position of another rep. That is also allowed. So finding different ways to maximize your body's capacity within the rules that have been very clearly communicated to both the judges and the athlete is what athletes are seeking here.
Time under tension, one of those aspects these athletes have to take into account as the loading gets heavier. How much time are they spending getting that barbell in that concentric lift?
And you see as she's pressing up there, and now this is what I would say a perceptively heavier load for her. If she goes for another set, it's not going to be by much more, and I expect her to take a big break before trying that. But she's resisting heavily that lean back. We're accustomed to doing that to create space to drive it up. You're not allowed to do that here, so she's really trying to fight what her body may be conditioned to doing in a strict press at a heavy load.
What's the easiest way to do that? Is that like a chin down thought? Is it a rib lock down thought process?
I love that you brought up the rib lockdown. I was not really introduced to that until the first time that I went through the CrossFit Level 1, and that cue in and of itself changed my entire approach to all overhead movements. That's probably where I would begin if I was trying to coach someone to correct that movement pattern and meet this standard. But every athlete responds to different cues, so working with your coach and finding out what is the cue that tricks the body to doing what you want to do is something that should be rehearsed in practice so that it becomes routine on the floor.
Angela Hill in that massive thought process and visualizing the important aspect of what you want to achieve before going to do it. Some athletes really focus in on this.
Yeah, I think preparing the mind for this particular lift is really important, because the other thing that's going to happen is that the first and second reps are going to feel very different, and by the time you get to rep 4, that's what you need to be preparing for before you're even picking up the bar for the first one.
I like what Angela was doing with her setup position, her elbows a little bit higher before she pressed. Those elbows dropped.
And going for the fractionals, and this is what I think we're going to see. There's only 6 minutes left now. Some of the athletes are clearly getting close to their capacity, so small incremental changes, and then taking several minutes, I would say, before attempting another load.
Well, you say capacity under fatigue and under competition load, you could say, which is not normal to going into training or practice or whatever you're doing and hitting it fresh.
Yeah, absolutely not. I spoke with several of the men prior to the competition beginning, and they said, don't be surprised if athletes end up with a score that's 50 to 60% of the lift that they could do in a different setting.
That's a lot less. 50 to 60% is massively less. I guess you've got to take your ego out of it and go, hey, I've just got to do what I can at that particular point in time, not what I've got written on my PR board.
And in the previous athlete, Magomedova, there we saw the first no reps on camera, at least, of that lean back position. And we get a double shot here. We know both of these women are pushing towards what we're going to call the limit of this movement in this scenario. And they're going to be battling against that in those later reps. It looks like Monica got another good set there. It's been about 3.5 minutes since Jen James did that last set, and she's still sitting on the floor. She has about 5 minutes left. And I think if she goes for one more set, it'll be her last set, either get it or not. So she's going to take some time and evaluate what's the right choice for me here.
Or do you try and put on one now and right at that back end 30 seconds, go for broke and maybe get it. If not, you don't.
Yeah, I think it's tempting to do that. It's
Isn't it
tempting
what?
to do that for sure. Like, always save one there. But really, if you know that you've got let's say 5 kilos or left in you compared to what you just did, I think you want to try to do what's going to be best for you to give one great effort at it.
Well, let's head down to Mike Bourne with an update on the floor.
Well, update on the floor, and you can actually see all the girls on the floor. They're actually taking a good bit of break now. They're inside the last 4 minutes of their lift. Obviously making sure they're taking rest to go for those last and final heavy attempts to get obviously their heaviest score on the board. One thing we have noticed so far is the fact that some of the athletes have been no reps in the middle of their set. And then instead of re-racking and starting over again, they've actually just done an extra rep to get their 5 reps total.
That's another aspect we haven't really covered. Those no reps are going to be absolutely critical. And getting a no rep in your set of 5 and having that now to bring it back down, reset your brain, go, okay, I don't want to do another one, but I have to do another one.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's just really being aware of what the rules are, is that you need to do 5 before you re-rack the bar. But it doesn't have to be 5 consecutively. It just has to be 5 approved reps.
Monica feeling way better. The dance has started to the music that's going on here in the background. And there was a little bit of quiet time for that first 10 minutes post the 20-minute erg test.
And she can feel her legs again.
Yeah, that's right.
Either that or she's trying to make sure that there's some blood moving through there, you know. She's been sitting. She already did a hefty effort on the bike, so get the blood flow there. Like you're going to see her here. She's going to squeeze the glutes and lock in the lower body right there. You saw it before she goes into the press, but the lower body is active during the pressing part of this motion.
And Monica doing exactly the same as Angela. Elbow position to start, drop the elbows. And you mentioned it before, Brian, with those wrist and elbow positions, getting into that strongest position you can for that low to go overhead.
Well, and unable to finish the set there and straight back to the floor. So she's in this gray area now where probably at this point she will pick it up with 30 seconds to go and say, why not? I've already put in all the rest of the work this weekend, and if I can get these extra kilos, who knows? But yeah, she's put herself in that middle ground where she went for it, didn't get it, and now she's got to hope that something clicks in the last 30 seconds if she wants to get another score on the board.
Final 2 minutes ahead of us. Jen James back on the bar at the top of your screen. Aisha Magomedova at the bottom of your screen. And Jen taking an eternity and a no rep, which is crucial. The amount of time Jen is sitting there with that bar in the rack position, it's a long time. And oh. Now this is going to be a tough finish for Jen James. She has put everything into that last rep, and I'm not sure this one's going to get over the head.
No, that looked like a max effort there on the previous one, and I'm not that surprised. She took about 6 or 7 minutes, and you see immediately she's leaning back in that rep. In the previous set that she got credited for, she was right on the verge of that and able to resist it. The few extra kilos she's added, and once she got to rep 4, she's been unable to do that, and I think at this point there's next to no chance that she's going to be able to get this final rep.
Fatigue is too great for Jen James. And the last 40 seconds, the last thing you feel like doing is holding that barbell in the rack position.
You know, we saw this in the swim earlier today with some athletes who they knew they weren't going to make the time cap, but they fought up to the end, and Jen doing the same thing here. I mean, she gave it several goes there, and it was everything that she had.
Monica getting to work, and you were spot on, Brian, the last 30 seconds. It is go for broke time.
think we're going to end up seeing a similar thing here where 2 reps look good. By the time you get to 3 or 4, the smile comes out and, you know, yeah.
She knew 3 minutes ago. And time wrapping up for our first heats of the afternoon here in the 321 Dome. And it is going to be a grueling afternoon.
Yeah, I mean, we get our first full look at the final part of the Crucible test here in 2026. It's these 4 stations back to back to back to back, 4 completely different demands. And as the heats wear on and we get closer and closer to narrowing in on that ultimate athlete, you can really see what that means is that you need to be good at so many different individual disciplines if you want to rise to the top of this division.
Oh, without a doubt. And the balance of the tests right across the day and a half, you could call it, rather than the 2 days. It has been programmed very well, and we are going to find who is going to be the ultimate athlete. Our first heat done, our next heat on the way shortly. And let's head down to the competition floor. Jane Urbacher.
Monica, great effort. You started really strong in the pool today, and then you had a really good afternoon. What was the plan going in?
Just do my best, like just survive. That's it, just survive.
And I did just comment that you look fresh right now. How are you feeling?
I had like 15 minutes kind of break here. Like after a bike, it was like, I want to go home. But no, I'm fine. Now I'm fine. I just want to survive the bike, to be honest. That's the toughest thing to do, but now it's fine.
And can you tell me, with that bike test, how did you prepare going into that?
To be honest, I haven't prepared to that at all. I mean, I'm cycling from time to time, but I didn't test it. I just remember how I done it last year, but last year we had 10 minutes. So I just keep the pace, okay, keep it. Okay, last 5 minutes a little bit faster, and that's it.
Well, you kept a very consistent pace and you really, really performed well today. You should be proud of yourself.
Thank you, I am. Thank you very much.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Oh, what a great finish there. Monica Paulak doing everything she needed to do out on the floor. It's so great to see these ladies really put themselves in the bin on that bike, but still pull it together in time to take on the strict press. Let's take a little look at the overall results. And there you have it. Polak in that #1 position. Isa Magadova, she takes second. And what impresses me the most was the standing bike, guys. The standing bike, and she still pulled that off. Angela Hill rounds out your top 3. And Jen James, our master there in 4th with the biggest lift on the push press. I'm going to start with Jen James because it does take a lot to be in a slightly older age category, Kate. And I'm not going to say as you know, but I'm going to say as you know, competing alongside athletes on a completely kind of different playing field. But you just got the sense she was waiting to show what she had on that strict press.
Absolutely love it. And yeah, it is hard chasing 20-year-olds, but it doesn't mean it's not possible. So that was a really phenomenal performance. She hit 45. She gave it absolutely everything at the end. She kept trying and kept trying. And I would love to congratulate her because she came 3rd in the Masters competition yesterday, and obviously advanced into the finals today. So it's really, really great to see. And yeah, recovery does get a little bit harder as you get older, but you can still do it.
That you can. Ed, though, Monica Paulak, she looked great.
Yes, she did. And actually, we're breaking down her bike erg, if I may, Lauren.
You may.
Okay, so here she is. Now, what's interesting is that she just said she had no strategy. She came in and just did it. But there's a few things that she's doing really well. And the first thing I want us to look at here is at the bottom of the revolution. Now, we're going to have a look at knee bend. We're looking at this angle here of the knee. And we're seeing about 10 degrees of knee flexion. And that's almost perfect. As Jane talked about, the majority of the work in the bike erg is going to be using the quads. And as the foot pedal returns around here, the hamstrings are going to take over. So I love that she's got that. But there's a second thing. Have a look at this. Jane highlighted this as she was going through. And what we're looking at here is slight pointing of the foot and the ball of the foot on the pedal. Why this is so important, this slight angle of the foot is going to now allow her hamstrings, which are located here, to really pull through and actually move that pedal all the way back round. So this position is spot on. So if we just let this play out now, we're gonna see as she pushes down, the quads are working, and as she pulls back, the hamstrings are working. And that's all to do with that setup position, so the knee stays slightly bent, only slightly, and talking about that foot position at the bottom of the cycle. So really, really good stuff from Monica Polak.
Kate, do you think with Monica Polak, we are seeing a similarity in capability, because her best result was the swim, and kind of that aerobic capacity does translate fairly well to the wattage on the bike?
Yeah, I would say there's definitely some cross-transfer there and cross-training. Like we discussed earlier around the pool, if you're a good runner, does it make you a good swimmer? If you've got the technique in the pool, then the aerobic endurance can actually transfer across. So I would say it is the same on the bike. Obviously, once again, setup of the bike, technique of the bike is going to play a role. But if you've got the aerobic capacity and you are used to your body removing lactate from your muscles, then you're going to be at a little bit more of an advantage.
Yeah, we actually talked about this in the swim event. Exactly. If you've got an athlete who has fantastic aerobic capacity, and like you said, they've got high levels of technique and efficiency in the pool, you're going to see two events where they could score well. When we look at the biker, again, Jane can talk about this thing all day, and she can make this thing sound like the most technical movement in the world. But when we compare the two, a lot less skill to do decently well in the biker. We saw it from Monica there. She didn't even think about it, and she still won the event. Relative to the swim, which, you know, there's so many technical nuances to it.
Angela Hill. So she finished third overall. She's someone else you've been taking a little look at, Ed. But what I thought was so interesting is this lift in the strict press. This was her only lift. She went in with a very strategic plan.
Yeah, so she clearly knew exactly what she wanted to hit. And what I want to talk about today, because it's our first heat, the strict press, is the setup position. So we're going to pause this here. Now, a couple of things we want to see. It all starts with your base. So what we're seeing here is that the feet are more or less directly underneath the hips. So we don't have this massively wide gap between the 2 feet. The second thing we want to look at is the elbow position. Now notice that the elbow is ever so slightly in front of the bar. Now we don't want a really high elbow, because what we want is to be able to leverage these triceps, which are going to be the main drivers of the strict press. And we want this bar path to go up and actually backwards slightly. So that bar is going to finish up and over her head. So let's have a look at this when we play it out. She presses, it moves up, back over the head. Now, if we just let this play out now, let's imagine her elbows were further down, which a lot of athletes do. What that might result in is the bar actually moving forward slightly. And if we know, based on the judging standards, super strict this year, if that bar moves remotely forward, the body could also move with it, and that's going to constitute to a no rep. So we want to see those elbows ever so slightly in front of the bar, allowing the athlete to drive the bar up and backwards.
What I thought was really good from the athletes across the board in this opening heat is that the no reps only seemed to come when they were under severe fatigue. They were actually all very online with what was expected of them in that opening heat.
Yeah, so one of the standards here is that they're looking for the athlete to remain perfectly upright at all times. Now, when I look at my own strict press, which is not impressive by any means, I have a tendency, as it gets heavy, to lean back.
Don't we all?
And why we lean back, and this is an important thing to understand, is that when we lean back, what it allows us to do, it allows us to bring the upper pec into the movement. And the upper pec generally is much stronger than the tricep and the deltoids of the shoulder. So what happens is that when the deltoids and the triceps start to fatigue, the body doesn't care how it's going to get the job done. It just needs to move that bar from A to B. And the way that it does that is by leaning back, bringing in some other muscles to contribute, is then going to allow athletes like myself to continue to move that bar up. But today, that's not allowed. So what we might see is that we may not see athletes hitting PRs on their strict presses, all-time best. Of course, the bike egg is having an effect on that. But because the movement standards are so strict, and they can only really use their delts and their triceps, and they can't use the pecs, it's probably going to mean that some of these loads are brought down slightly. And of course, if athletes have been practicing, which I hope they have, according to these really strict standards, they should know what they can hit. But if anyone's caught off guard, anyone's learning about these standards today, they may have to adjust expectations as to what they can hit.
Amazing stuff. Well, Heat 1 have set the standard. Let's see what Heat 2 can do They're up next. Welcome back to day number 2, the finals, heat number 2, and this is going to be our starting list of elite females. Cast your eyes to lane number 8. CrossFit Games athlete Mia Hesketh has returned from having her second child and is back on the competition floor. Also, WFP challenger Kamila Takieva is in lane number 6.
In the warm-up area with Iris Rusenlev, you had a great swim this morning. And for a non-swimmer, you're happy with your result. You've been working on your swimming, and now you've got some big tests ahead of you. How's your warm-up going, and what movement are you looking forward to the most?
Oh, I'm looking forward to the front squat, I think. I've been working on my front squat, and it's been improving, so I hope it's going well. And yeah, the warm-up is starting. It's a lot to warm up for all the movements, so a lot to do.
Which movement would you have to take more time to warm up for?
I think the squat, because it's also the first one, so you need to be like ready to hit it. The other ones, you have already some, you get warm during the event.
And how are you feeling about the FTP test? 20 minutes on that bike.
So excited.
All the best, Iris.
Iris, you're in that camp. You're either in one camp or the other.
Well, those Nordic athletes, they love a bike. So, you know, coming from Finland, she's got plenty of experience. She'll know what she's doing out there.
A few more training sessions indoors, so that's okay. But we can't wait to see what Iris can do. And it is day number 2. We're up to heat number 2. And it is the finals of the Crucible. And our final 4 workouts of the day. Jeremy Austin and Brian Friend with you. We'll get down to Jane Urbacher shortly and Mike Bourne on the competition floor. And it is the first of our workouts of the afternoon, the 7-rep max front squat.
Yeah, parallels the deadlift from yesterday. It's a 90-second interval. They have 7 reps to achieve. They have 1 attempt. So the choice that you make with the weight is critical. You have to feel into where your body's at in this moment, given the work they've done yesterday, but also conscious of the work that's to come. You don't have to hit 7 reps to advance, but there is a minimum average weight per rep that needs to be achieved. So making a great choice here can really get you off to a good momentum as you progress through these things. Iris mentioned that she's been looking forward to the front squat. She's been putting in the work. Of these 4 disciplines, it's one that we do have a little bit of a benchmark, albeit 5 years ago when we had a 4-rep test in a quarterfinal. She did 203 pounds then, which is 92 kilos. I'm curious to see where her 7-rep is at compared to that 5 years later.
A number of our athletes in the field scratching that itch. Mia Hesketh, one of those as well. Caught up with Mia earlier on today, and I was 100% sure this was going to be a really good workout for her. She goes, not so much since having kids. I haven't been doing a lot of squatting, and I went, okay. She goes, I've been chasing kids around. and chasing husband Phil around as well.
Maybe more deadlifting, picking them up from the floor.
Exactly right. But great to see her back in competition again. She said, I am just here for fun. Phil's been the one who's been doing the training, so.
Well, and it's been great. I've seen him in the interim. He's got their kid right now. She'll take them later on and pass them back and forth as they take turns on the floor. It's pretty cool that they're still both fit enough to come out here and do this.
Parenting 101 at its best.
And as the sport's matured and more athletes from the younger years have had kids, we've seen this incredible ability to return to competition, and they're just adding their names to the list of athletes able to do that.
Underway for our second heat of the afternoon. We are looking for our ultimate athletes. 8 tests across the course of 2 days. Our qualifiers yesterday, our top 30 women moving on. And 7 rep max front squat is our first workout of the afternoon.
And Iris, who you mentioned there, had hit 92 for 4 5 years ago. 90 on the bar here, and it looks like an easy 7. So clearly has been putting in the work.
And as you mentioned, one crack only. You've got to make sure, yes, you do get credit for the reps you do, but you've got to make sure, Angela Hill, we saw in the previous heat, only getting those 6 reps out of 7, but still doing enough to get that second spot on the leaderboard for her heat.
Yeah, and a pair of 90s, and Mia Hesketh joining Iris Rosenloff there, but Anastasia Jasovits out of Estonia, 95 kilos, which will be the new benchmark for the women in the subsequent heats. And as we talked about on the deadlift, the windows are the same, but the time to finish the front squats is less. All of them finish with an additional 55 seconds, so they have over 4.5 minutes to prepare for the next test.
Mia Hesketh saying she's just here for fun. I don't believe that for a second now. She's hit 90 for 7.
Well,
and that's 5 years later than the stats we have got from the quarterfinal.
And she looks totally locked in. Within a few seconds of racking that bar, she was taking off her shirt, grabbing a belt, getting ready for the next thing. She knows exactly what she's doing out there.
Some good results so far. And it is going to be a battle of the Europeans for heat number 2. Iris Rusanov and Mia Hesketh. Some good loading to start things off. Sarah Thompson on the screen at the moment. And let's head down to Mike Bourne.
So I'm down on the floor, but I'm also in the spectator area with fellow athlete, but also husband of Mia Hesketh. And I just wanted to ask you, Phil, what's it like to actually watch Mia back on the floor again? Because it's been a long time since she's competed properly, but now you've got another little one in tow that is here watching her for the first time as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really cool experience. Like, I love watching. It's been more stressful in the past. Mia's pretty chilled about this competition, so I can be a little bit chilled and enjoy watching her. We've done competitions before when that's not been so enjoyable because obviously it's been a bit more stressful for her, but today having some fun and getting back to Earth 10 months ago and probably.
Oh, hopefully we'll hear from Phil Hesketh a little bit later on, probably after he takes to the floor. But wow, isn't Mia Hesketh just a force to be reckoned with? Merely 10 months after giving birth, she's back on the competition floor and lifting 90 kilos for 7 reps, Kate.
I was not doing that. Took me a little bit longer.
Did it indeed?
Well, then I was having another one. It's super impressive. And, you know, she looks amazing as well. She looks ready to be competing. So fantastic.
Now, that puts her into third with 97 points, tied with Iris Rosenlov in second. But Anastasia Jasovits, a 95-kilogram lift, Ed. I mean, that's a statement to make.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's some serious load. I mean, I really had my eyes on Mia as we were going through that, so unfortunately I didn't get to see her lift, but I saw the tail end of her last rep and there was very minimal breakdown in form and technique, which begs the question, was there more in the tank? But, you know, something we're looking for, and we'll break this down a little bit later, is we're looking for ladies to maintain that upright torso position, right? Because in the front squat, unlike the back squat, there is no room for error. If that torso falls forward, the elbows drop, that bar is falling forward. And we're about to go down to pull-ups now.
And away we go. And the focus, you mentioned it before, Brian, the laser focus and the athletes locking in We saw it immediately from Mia Hesketh post the front squats. Iris doing exactly the same thing.
I loved what I saw from her there, actually. Yesterday we saw Jessie Smith being a little late to getting the weight belt hooked on. What I think you're trying to avoid there is holding the load for longer than you need to. Iris using the step stool that they're allowed to get up to the pull-up bar to support that weight, meaning that as soon as she's ready to go, she can just drop it off and get to work on the pull-ups.
And the last thing you need is a little bit more anxiety leading into final day of competition. But preparation counts for everything. Sarah Thompson just managing to get everything sorted before things get underway.
And we see a no rep there for the right for Kamila Takeeva in the pink shoes. So just a reminder on the pull-ups here. It's 3 minutes of work, and these are strict, and we mean strict pull-ups. So what we're looking for is that the body stays in a straight line underneath the bar, which means that the feet must be underneath the body until the chin clears the bar. The common fault that you'll see is that the feet drift forward into a slight pike position, but as soon as those heels break forward from below the hips, the judge will signify a no rep. Additionally, after clearing the chin over the bar, you lose the strictness of the lower body, but you must still remain in control all the way back to a hanging position. We'll see Iris establish that there very clearly and get a rep on the top left before going up for a double.
Mia Hesketh at the bottom of your screen in lane number 8. And hopefully we get a chance to chat to husband Phil Hesketh again, who was kicking around with young baby Haley Ray.
When I mentioned that Iris had done a double there, she managed to do 4 sets of 2 in the first minute to get to 8 reps. Mia Hesketh, 11 sets of 1 in the same interval.
Very reminiscent of Emily DeRoy yesterday with her single reps of the dips and workout number 2, which gave her top 5 score.
Yeah, and with the exception of a couple what I'll call very outlier athletes in terms of very proficient body weight movers, I think that 1 rep rest is going to be a good recipe over this 3-minute interval for a majority of these athletes.
Mia Hesketh is on.
Great shot there to see how little time she's spending off the pull-up bar. We're getting close to the 1-minute mark, so now she had 11 and now 7.5 reps in the second minute, so there is a little regression.
Sarah Thompson cutting down that time frame between reps, but also cutting down that lead, but taking an extra few seconds at the end of every rep. Now, Iris doing a great job as well. Maintaining those standards once you are at your limit is one of the hardest things. Sarah then just getting a no rep to the top right of your screen in lane 5. 21 reps, make that 22. For Mia Hesketh at the bottom of your screen in lane 8.
And a really key execution here with the last 20 seconds. Can you get 2 or 3 good reps in, maximizing the totality of the 3 minutes that they have?
How many times did we see that yesterday with the dips where people just snuck in enough to grab a top 10 spot? And no rep from Mia Hesketh to finish things off. And she'll call it quits there, as will Iris Rosenloff and Sarah Thompson. Now 3 athletes on screen.
And if you're going to get a no rep and it's the last rep, that's kind of where you want to be. You're pushing the limit right up until the end of the interval. So I would say, despite the no rep on the last one, that was a very clean execution across the totality of the 3 minutes she was given.
Mia Hesketh goes 1 and 2. 2 great results. For more on that, let's head to Lauren.
Thanks, Jeremy. Yeah, Mia Hesketh putting on a little bit of a show, even though she said she wasn't expecting much of herself, which is slightly wild to think about it now, watching her in action. But Kate, that last no rep, you've done those pull-ups, you've given this a go. It's so easy to do, isn't it? Especially when you're rushed by the buzzer.
Yeah, and I was doing it yesterday without the weight on, and the judges and Jeremy were being very strict on me. And yeah, it's really, really tough. And you think that your feet aren't moving forward, but as soon as they just start to move, it's so hard to control. You really have to engage that core, really lock in and just make sure there's no movement.
Well, 23 reps, that no rep not playing a part at the moment. Kamila Takeeva, she's going to be in 20th, the woman from Kazakhstan. Sarah Thompson rounding out your leaders at the moment. All of them pushing themselves up into the top half of the overall leaderboard. That is a good start for our women from Sweden.
What can Mia Hesketh do? 2 down, 2 to come. But she's got some good company.
What can't she do?
I'm just here for fun. Sure thing you are. No, you're not. You're a competitor.
Well, and with what we've seen already through the first 2 stations and just also knowing the history of the athletes in this heat, I think you're going to see from the start a different output on the bike across the lanes that we have in heat number 2. Keeping in mind that 210 was the highest average that we saw, and that 150 is the minimum they're allowed. I think a majority of this heat is going to be above 200.
Sarah Thompson, fairly slow start in relation to rotation of the pedals and trying to maintain position. And there's certain things that I know Jane is going to be talking about, and we'll probably actually get down to her very shortly. In regards to your setup and your race start, Jane, let's head down to you and just trying to explain exactly why a fast start is important.
Quickly is we actually see that the monitor responds really well. So the monitor is forward projecting the result based off the average of what's actually been done. So it's a slight delay, but it does make a really big difference for the athletes to actually start quite explosively. We also know from the way that our muscles work and our physiology works that starting quite explosively can be a really good thing for our body. It's almost like free energy. And so one of the best things we can actually do is start very explosively, get the leg speed up, but then get straight into that saddle, take the load off those quads.
Thanks, Jane. Mia Hesketh in a good position currently, 2:03, just behind Dalia Youssef in 2:04, and Kamila Takiyeva get that 2:09, 2:10. So that's a very good rate to start things off.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, in addition to the way that it impacts your body, and we heard Ed talk about it earlier, if you're going to stand up at any point during this thing, it's at the beginning and the end, and really drive into it and just give yourself a little buffer off that first 30 seconds. I'm actually quite surprised that we didn't see more women in this heat choose to start that way.
Our second heat of women for this afternoon. Our top 30 moving forward after day one. Our qualifiers yesterday, 3 workouts, 5 workouts today. In the pool earlier and now into the dome for the final 4. And this is workout number 3 of 4. 20 minutes for the FTP test on the Concept 2 bike erg before the athletes move on to the final workout, workout 8.
We see Dalia Youssef here. We had a chance to talk to her after a great performance at the pool yesterday, and she said she was looking forward to this. She's one of the athletes that did kind of build that quick buffer up over 200. She's drifted a little bit down below it now, but she looks very composed on the bike, and it looks like she's got her seat at pretty much an optimal setting where she is getting that quad press on the way down and hamstring engagement on the recovery on the way back up.
All athletes, bar Mia Hesketh, dropping below that 200 average watt mark. And let's head down to Jane Urbacher.
So a metric that we are really analysing here right now isn't just the average watts, which is obviously the score, but in order to achieve those average watts, one of the things we're actually looking to do is to keep our RPM up. So we're actually looking, what's it going to be measured off the drag factor, which is determined by the damper setting, so that dial on the side, and how that interacts with our RPM, the pace of that pedal stroke. Okay, so how we can create power through that pedal stroke. And so something I'd really like to draw attention to is the difference in the RPM across these athletes right now. Someone that I think we should watch is Mia. So Mia Hesketh is keeping a really nice consistent RPM over 80. That's what we're seeing, which is actually the optimal range on this bike erg. Anything under 80, from a mathematical perspective, what we actually see is less reward for the work that's being done. And for a 20-minute effort, that is going to compound. So the fatigue from that lower grind in terms of the RPM with that higher damper setting is going to create more of that muscular fatigue. So what we do want to see is we want to see that RPM up over 80. 85 to 95 would be the optimal range, but anything under that 80, that means that the athlete isn't actually being rewarded for the work that they're doing as much as if they were just over that 80 mark.
Actually, kind of funny. We're looking at the back end stats over here, and as you were talking about that, Jane, a couple of the other athletes seem to respond to it. I see Kamila Takieva and Anastasia Jasovits clicking over that 80 mark at this point as well in terms of RPMs.
Maintaining that difficult, way more difficult than it sounds. And the 20 minutes, a grueling test. The athletes. Body position is going to be important as well. That's going to tell an important factor in regards to fatigue once the athletes get over that 10-minute mark and how fresh they're actually feeling.
Yeah, and another interesting nuance that I noticed from Mia Hesketh right from the start is something that I actually first learned from one of the more tactical athletes in competitive fitness, and Brent Fikowski, is having an intention with your breathing over these long sustained efforts on machines. There were instances in the past where you would see him doing an exaggerated breath when he shouldn't have been out of breath, in order to kind of tell himself that I need to be taking this oxygen in at a regular interval throughout this. And she's been doing that from the start. You see that she's breathing with an intentional cadence, and this has been since go for Mia Hesketh.
Experience counts for something, does it not?
Well, it absolutely does. I mean, we've spoken a lot about experience this weekend with regards specifically to the Crucible and the way that they design things, but now we're talking about just a general application of how to breathe over a long period of time, and in this case on the bike, and it seems like Mia knows what she's doing when it comes to that.
Let's head down to Jane Urbacher, who is just alongside Mia Hesketh.
So I'd love to draw attention to the upper body position that we can see on Mia right now. So she is actually in an optimal position with her upper body. So we can see a really stationary upper body. She's got very little rock through her body, which means there's not that much energy leak. So whenever we're doing any kind of activity, like whether it's a barbell movement or a gymnastics movement, we want to try and minimize energy leakage. We want all the energy we're putting into the activity to go into generating a score for us. So what you're going to see, and we can see a really great comparison across the athletes now, is we can see here from Mia, she's really steady and stable with that upper body, which means all of her energy is actually going into those pedals, which means the energy she's putting into the activity is being scored in the watts. As we kind of move down the line, we can see a real variance in that upper body position. Any of that rocking through that upper body is something we really want to avoid at all costs.
Energy leakage, one of those things that as an athlete, an elite athlete, and a successful athlete, you want to try and minimize, and throughout the course of the 8 workouts in 2 days here, you want to try and minimize that as much as possible. And not just here.
No, absolutely, and having the privilege to see the average watts change in real time as athletes are progressing through this 20 minutes is really nice. And I projected that a majority of this heat would finish above 200. We saw Monica Polak drop down from 205 to 200 before climbing back to 210 in the final third or the final quarter of this test. And I think all the athletes that are lurking close to 190 or above still have the potential for that push late into the interval to get up at or above the 200 mark. So in terms of energy leakage here, I think this is actually sort of like a little intentional dip in effort output so that you can finish with a flurry.
Just going back to what Jane said as well about position of body, Mia Hesketh maintains that rigid body and lack of movement on the bike. If we go down the bottom to Dahlia, who's rocking from side to side, and Sarah, who's on the top left of your screen, there's so much body movement and you're working so much harder. Mia, very stationary, very specific with what she's doing.
Yeah, this is, similar to what we saw from Luca on the run yesterday. He had the fastest split of any advancing athlete, and it looked like he was doing very little because it was such efficient movement. If you watch a class full of people biking in any gym around the world, you'll see people that don't look like they're doing much and people who look like they're giving it everything. But that giving it everything, if it's side to side, you're actually taking away from the effort you could be applying towards the forward momentum and downward momentum you want to get the bike to do the work for you. And it might appear like you're doing a lot of work, but you're not doing it efficiently.
Seen a little bit of that with the Olympics and the ski jump of late. Propelling yourself forward. Important for good results.
Whatever it takes.
Whatever it takes, Brian. 210, our best output so far.
And I'm curious here, you know, you were asking me in the first heat about how do you break this thing up, and in this middle third, I mean, we have definitely seen quite a depression. Like, everyone's numbers are drifting downward, except for Iris Rosenlauf. Hers has been the one number that's steadily been ticking up, and I mentioned, obviously, the Nordic athletes have a history of biking and cross-country skiing and long endurance outputs, and I don't think it's impossible here that she ends up passing this entire heat. While most of the athletes started above 200 in the first 2 minutes, she was below 170, and that gap is shrinking.
It is, as is the time getting to that halfway point. Let's head down to Jane.
I want to point out here for Anastasia, she had a huge front squat. She did really well there. And I want to draw attention here to the push and pull that she's creating with her feet angle here. So we can see with some of the other athletes, they're pushing with a completely flat foot, which is all quad. What we can see from Anastasia here is there's a push and a pull happening. And the way she's creating that is through the angle of her feet. So we can see a little bit of a pointed toe, and then she's really pulling up. And this is really important for the bike erg. This test, the FTP, isn't generally done on a Concept 2 bike erg, and one of the main reasons for that isn't because the bike erg isn't the most amazing thing in the world, because it is, but it's because you can't necessarily clip your feet in. And so what the athletes actually have to do is they have to mimic the push and pull, the hamstring activation on the pull through the angle of their feet, and Anastasia's doing that really well right here.
Thanks, Jane. And as we tick over that halfway point, this is where athletes are really going to have to start getting into that grind. Iris doing a wonderful job so far. Brian, you mentioned it, the steady increase in that average watts, and you want to get it up as close to 200 as you can.
We see a little shifting of the upper body position there, but from the hips up through the shoulders, very, very little movement, whether the arms are extended or resting on the handlebars.
If you look to the back with Mia Hesketh, that body position still maintained. And one of the hardest things to do on a Concept 2 bike is balance that water bottle exactly where Mia Hesketh has put it.
I have failed at balancing it several times, Jeremy. And
I've
it
just
falls
stopped,
to the floor and you're like,
I've just stopped doing it.
Go gadget arms. Unfortunately, I don't have that.
But hydrating as you go along. Another important factor, hey, Mia's recovering a little bit more. A number of the athletes doing just that. Iris with that water bottle resting in just above that damper.
Yeah, we spoke about it this morning with Ed, is that there was several different factories of recovery that were going to be coming into play throughout the day today. These athletes had to get up early, especially the women. They had several hours to rest and prepare. What you do during that time to fuel appropriately for this is one thing, but we've already done a heavy squat, a max effort of pull-ups, and now we're in the middle of a big bike interval with another lift coming up. So whether it's liquids, little electrolytes, maybe even some liquid carbs in there, something that works for them so that they can also have these short intervals of recovery to do another output that they still need to with the barbell in the final station.
Now, if we fast forward 7.5 minutes from now, looking at the course of our second heat of our women, the best placed person fatigue-wise looks to be Mia Hesketh straight away.
I mean, it seems that way, yes. Some of these athletes, though, have a lot of competition experience recently, in particular in the top left there, Kamila Takeeva. She competes across Asia, the Middle East, and the Mediterranean region of Europe quite frequently during the year. I would say upwards of a dozen to 15 competitions in a year. And so she is very well conditioned in practice to all different types of testing. And I think that there's a chance that she'll still have something in the tank as well for that press.
Again, some body movement starting to creep in from Camilla, who is at the top left. Dahlia at the bottom. Body really starting to move around and pushing those quads down as hard as she can.
It is, and look at how tight this gap has gotten. She's leading the heat right now with an average watts of 194, but with the exception of Lilian Kava, the lowest score of the rest of them is now Rosenlauf and Takeeva at 188. So 6 is the difference between those athletes with 6 minutes to go. I still think there's everything up for grabs, and every athlete from 3 to 8 has a chance to win this heat.
Iris continuing to progress up to 188 now. Jasovits on 189. And that foot position, the toe tapping down.
One of the athletes we haven't spoken much about that is also creeping upwards slowly and towards the top of the heat is Sarah Thompson in lane number 5. This is, I mean, at this point, we're getting to the last quarter here, and this is pretty fun. Like, everyone has...
It's fun for us, Brian.
It is fun, you know. In the last heat, it was so spread out, but now I'm, like, very curious to see who has paced this appropriately and who's maybe pushed the envelope a little too hard early.
Sarah out of the saddle a little bit. After speaking with Jane, she goes, there is 1% improvement if you come out of the saddle. And I think you've just got to work with your fatigue and what's going to get you over the line quicker.
More likely than not, for all of the women on the floor right now, they are feeling more pain in their legs than they are in their lungs. And so when you see someone come up for just 5 to 10 seconds like that, I don't think it's because they're trying to gain an advantage. I think it's because they're trying to get comfortable.
Current wattage for Sarah Thompson now dropping by 5. Let's head down to the floor with Jane.
And I know we've talked about this, but what we're looking to do is we're looking to create power through those pedals. And so when we are leaning over the handlebars too much or we're hanging our head, that power isn't necessarily going through the pedals. So what we do want to see is we don't want to see our head hanging, and we don't want to see ourselves leaning too much on that handlebar because it's taking that load away from pushing through our legs. But the reason that athletes are doing that is because their legs are absolutely fried, right? And so they're trying to take some of that focus off their legs. But as soon as they do that, they lose power. And so we don't want them to actually lose power. We want them to maintain that power and that energy to actually go into what we're doing. Getting up out of the saddle, the idea for people to get up out of the saddle, it's more of a mental benefit than it actually is for a physical benefit, because what it's going to do, that feeling you've got through your quads, it's just going to exacerbate it. So we actually do want to stay in the saddle, and we want to actually focus on pulling up on every stroke. It's super counterintuitive, but it's going to be really productive if we can actually maintain that upper body position and also that push-pull through the pedals.
Thank you, Jane. Breaking down exactly what is happening on this Concept 2 bike erg. Less than 4 minutes remain now. The mental battle continues for these athletes. And I don't think any of them are worried at all about what is to come. They just want to finish this first, then recover, rest, and then get to work on their final workout of the day, the strict press of 5 reps.
Yeah, I think at this point, that's what you have to do. And the only athlete who has continuously moved up and not ticked down at all on the average is still Iris Rosenlauf. She's not in the lead yet. She's four average watts off of Dahlia, but she's within 2 of everyone else.
If anything to go by our previous heats, about that 90-second mark is the time to push.
And Iris has just hit the 190 mark, bringing her level with Mia. 1 average wattage off of Sarah Thompson, and I don't know, I just have a feeling she's going to end up with the top score here. The thing we should note, as you see in the top in the red, is that Monica Paulak's score of 210 watts is looking very impressive now that we've seen a second heat take this on. 2.5
minutes remain of our second heat of our women. 3 heats to come before we get to our final 5 heats of the men, day 2. The Crucible finals, live from Abu Dhabi.
Wow, 4 women on 190 right now. Dahlia down to 192, and her RPMs is just hovering above 60. Iris Rosenlauf and the rest of the crew at 79 to 83. This is going to get even tighter. I think, look at that. 5 women within 1 average watt with 2 minutes to go.
We have a race on our hands. Make that 1 average watt. Oh, this is crazy stuff. And the final 2 minutes is going to break down a very interesting story. Mia Hesketh starting to make a move, 191 level, but not a level now. Dahlia jumping ahead by 1. This battle is going to come down to who wants it that little bit more and who has recovered and has enough energy stores.
And Mia's putting in an extra effort here. She was at 190. She's ticked up to 191. Rosenlauf has done the same. And we're going to get to see that mental capacity, because right now everyone is feeling bad. And this is where you have to just turn the mind off and tell yourself that I have 75 seconds left and I can do this.
Mia Hesketh hovering around the 191 with Jasovits, Thompson and Rosenlauf. Yusuf still leading on 193.
And she's actually pushed her average RPMs up by 10 in the last 30 seconds to maintain that lead right now.
Mia adjusting her damper now up to about a 6 or 7 and needs to push this home as hard as she can. Yusuf, it is hurting.
And that's exactly how it should look at this point of the interval. Look at that. She's doing everything. She's at 194. Rosenloff in lane 7 up to 193. Hesketh and Jasovits 192. Thompson 191. This is any woman's game.
This is going to be mad. Rosenloff, she is working hard.
And here you see full body forward and slightly adjusting the foot position to get maximal effort in these last 20 seconds. She's within one of the top score in the heat right now. Here we go.
195 for Yusuf, but Rosenloff coming home strong. 5 more seconds remaining. This has been a great heat, and it has been ridiculously tight, and exactly what we needed to see was all of our ladies pushing to their absolute limit.
And I think we ended up with a tie there. 2 women at 195. Dalia Youssef, who is leading from the front. Iris Rosenloff, who came from the way back of the pack, starting at 168, never going backwards, and ending up tied for the lead. Jasovits, I believe, at 194. Epic second heat on the bike.
One word for you, Brian, and that is lactate. On more on that, let's head to Lauren and the guys in studio.
I feel like it's lactate and how to clear it, isn't it? That was intense. But it was Dalia Youssef who took the heat win on the Bike. Interestingly, also in the pool this morning, Kate. But we noticed a little bit of a trend in how she was cycling and what her pacing strategy was. She would go every 7 minutes and then take a real big max effort for about 30 to 40 seconds. Why would you do that, and what kind of advantages was that giving her?
So it's a different tactic than we've seen from the other ladies, and she may have wanted to do that to try and accumulate an extra minute or 2 at a higher intensity to increase her score. Ed and I were obviously just discussing it, and it may have advantages depending on how long that burst is. But you don't want that burst to be so long that you're creating too much lactic acid, and then you may drop off more. So I think looking at the frequency that you do it and how long you do it for is very important. And Ed was just sort of saying about, I'll let him take over in a minute, about the fast twitch muscles and not recruiting them really too much in this, because then the lactate is going to kick in.
Yeah, thank you, Kate. So we know that lactate typically is produced once the fast twitch muscle fibers start working. So what happens when we sprint, we start moving away from the slow twitch fibers and the fast twitch fibers take over. And what starts to happen is that lactate levels in the blood will start to increase. And we all know what happens when lactate exceeds the rate that the body can clear it. So think about it like this. Lactate levels are going up and the body's trying to bring those lactate levels down. But at some point, if the lactate buildup is exceeding at a rate too fast that the body can't clear it, that's where we get to the point of the muscle tissues where they stop working. So the risk here, exactly as Kate said, it can be advantageous, but if you don't give yourself long enough to actually clear that lactate, or you spend too long there, then you could actually reach that kind of failing point where you can't move any further.
But it could be why she was leaving a little bit longer, so it wasn't every 3 minutes. Maybe that was her tactic, every 7 minutes, and it gave her time to recover and the levels to drop again.
Well, let's see how she does recover, and we'll head back to commentary for our strict press.
Thank you, Lauren. Thank you, team. And let's see what that lactate clearance does. Great explanation from Ed once again.
Huge variety of the entry point into this 15-minute interval. We got a long shot there of Iris laying on the floor, conserving every ounce of energy. Kamila Takeeva has already done a little opening two reps to start warming up the overhead movement. Most of the other women starting to load up just now. I mentioned that Takeeva has a ton of competition experience. She didn't end up pushing quite as hard as the rest of the women on that bike, finishing a few average wattages behind them, which will cost her some points. But if that ends up with her potentially having a great score on the strict press, it may be something she was willing to give up.
Jasovits looks as though she is loading 35 kilos onto the bar mare Hesketh. When I spoke to her, this is one of the workouts she was excited to be doing at the back end, and that's exactly why.
Yeah, and same as Takeeva there, she's not going for a set of 5 at this load. She's just going to do a little opening 2 rep to warm the body up and remind her body of what is coming up next.
Sarah Thompson just trying to wipe all that sweat down so the barbell doesn't move. Smart move.
All these little tactics come into play when you're talking about high-level competition. The margins are so small, and making sure that you don't waste a set due to something as silly as being a little bit extra sweaty when you have 15 minutes is obviously a veteran move. Let's see, this looks like the first attempt that we're actually going to get in this heat for someone to put 5 full reps together and get a score on the board.
That bar coming out a little bit further for Thompson around the face, and that's increasing the load and the time under tension.
It definitely is, but it is a way to adhere to the standard, because the bar path isn't part of the standards. It's the shoulders that can't lean back. So you're absolutely putting an extra tension on aspects of the upper body, but you're keeping your head in a neutral position, resisting the lean back that can be tempting otherwise.
Iris looking great on the first 5 reps, and the re-rack all part of the process to enable you to get a good rep.
Yes, if you weren't with us for the first heat, the strictness of the standards for this press is paramount. So from the foot through the shoulders, we're looking for no movement. The lean back of the shoulders is the most likely cause for a no rep. In terms of the top position, you need to see the wrist directly over the shoulder, and then for a rep to count, you need to bring it back below the chin and establish control. The full 5 reps will not count until the bar is re-racked in the front position and re-racked into the rack.
Our weight to beat, 45 kilos. And we've ticked over 5 minutes. We have 10 minutes remaining. Takeyeva looks like she's at the back end of what she's capable of, and she has got a lot of time where she can recover now if she's only going to do 1, potentially 2 more sets.
I think she's got a good score on the board, and by good I mean that it will be half, like at least beat half the field at this point, and she has over half of the time domain remaining. In the strict press, even if it's a 1 rep max strict press, 1-2 kilos can go from something that feels easy to impossible. Now you talk about a 5 rep max, and so giving yourself a full amount of time here to potentially increase your score by 2.5 kilos could potentially yield 5 to 10 spots on the leaderboard by the time all the heats shake out.
Jasovitz about to attempt her next 5 rep max. Let's head down to Mike on the floor.
Yeah, so I'm just behind Lillian Carver, lane number 2. She currently has 40 kilos on the bar. I'm just going to give you a rundown of what is on the bar. 45 kilos for lane number 3, Dalia Youssef. Lane number 4, Anastasia Jasovitz, has 45 kilos on the bar. Lane number 5, Sarah Thompson, 45 kilos on the bar. Lane number 6, Kamila Takeyeva, she has, quick maths here, 52.5 kilos on the bar. Iris Rosenlöv, lane 7, has 42.5 kilos on the bar. And Mia Hesketh in lane number 8 has 47.5 kilos on the bar. So at the moment, as we look through, again, a couple of the girls taking a chance to sit down and rest, but they're actually looking a lot fresher than the previous heats. So maybe we'll see some bigger numbers on that strict press as we go through the remainder of this 15 minutes.
Takeyeva, as Mike mentioned, leading heat number 2 in regards to weight load, but keep in mind, she was the first on her feet to load her barbell and start lifting.
Yeah, and I think 2.5 kilos is the minimum increment you can make any one direction. So you see that the margins are very small there, and there's seems to be a big pile up already at about 45. Kamila having already banked 50, doesn't sound that much heavier, is a huge separation gap compared to the field. If she's able to hit that 52.5, it's that much more of an advantage going into the later heats.
Mia Hesketh looking strong last rep.
And that's going to give her 47.5, breaking the deadlock at 45, which was the previous best that we've seen from Heat 1 and a score that we see from multiple other athletes either already banked or about to be attempted in this heat.
I would expect Mia to probably go to 50 and do that, giving herself potentially 5 minutes of rest, do that pretty comfortably.
And this is a great shot if you can see how much is actually taking out of these athletes by the end of this effort. Takeyeva here, I think that was her 5th rep. We see the 4 in the reps column there. May have been that close to getting that extra 2.
But knowing when to pull out as well. Hey, it was taking too long. My time and attention's too great. But let's head down to Mike on the floor.
Okay, so after I just came offline the last time, Sarah Thompson took a chance to say to me, thank God you gave us 15 minutes to complete these strict presses after the bike because my legs feel like jelly. And obviously this is one thing that we've got to take into account here is how the legs feel, even though it's a strict press in its upper body, in terms of the standard and squeezing the legs, squeezing the glutes and bracing the core and staying still, it makes it so much harder when those legs are so fatigued from the bike.
I'm only going to imagine the fatigue levels, Mike. I'm not sure I actually want to go through and find out exactly how bad it is. Dahlia, unable to get that one, and that will be re-racked.
I believe that was her first attempt at 47.5. She got 2 reps and was unable to complete the 3rd.
Sarah going through, and the jelly legs seems to have subsided for the time being. In the last 5 minutes of our final workout number 8, the 5 RM strict press. And the time it's taking from that shoulder position to overhead. Iris no good with that one, the shake of the head from her.
It seems like more and more women piling up on that 45 number.
I think Iris is going through the same jelly legs.
Well, and for this particular workout, the strict press, there is no tie break. So if you end up with 8 athletes on 45, that means that 47.5 clears you by quite a bit from someone who only hits 42.5 in terms of total points. And so each of these efforts is so paramount as you're pursuing placements and payouts on this leaderboard.
I don't know if you noticed that last shot of Iris and Mia talking to Mike Bourne on the floor, but Mia is still resting. He's probably still down there. Let's head down, Mike.
Yeah, so I did actually just have a good conversation with the two. I went over to Mia and asked her how she's feeling. She's like, yeah, I'm good, I'm done. 47.5 is pretty much my limit. She said I'd like to have got 48. But she's 50 is probably a bit out of her reach in terms of the standard. She was getting a bit close to leaning back, and she's happy taking her 47.5. Iris then joined the conversation, and her exact words were, beep my legs. She's struggling to unrack the bar before even starting. So taking those extra few minutes to get the rest is what they need to get their main attempt in. But it's all fun and games down here on the dance floor, as they call it, and it's nice to see the competitors talking amongst each other in between attempts.
Well, we've been talking about the ambiance amongst athletes all weekend and how great it's been, but those 2 athletes do paint the perfect picture for what we're talking about. 47.5 actually is on the right side of that 45 number. Iris currently at 42.5, and getting to 45 could be, 10 placements worth of points for her in this one workout if she's able to do it.
Camilla, another failed attempt, and she's going to call it there. Interestingly, Mike just said that Mia has called that. She had 6.5 minutes remaining on the time cap and knows her limits, which, hey, you've got to know your limits and know where you should and shouldn't push to.
Absolutely. And Camilla, on the other hand here, I think she's going to be a little disappointed. I mean, she got that 50 with 10 minutes to go and wasn't able to find a way to get 52.5. Nevertheless, it's the best score we've seen so far, and it's always great to win your heat and to beat the previous heat, so it'll be interesting to see how that holds up. And what I really would be curious to ask her now is, did she think she could have pushed a little harder on the last minute or 2 of the bike and still hit that 50 kilo strict press for 5?
Jasovitz successful. Oh, that hurts. And I think that is going to do in the last 90 seconds. I'd love a gauge of lactate levels. Athletes coming off that FTP. Iris getting to work.
This is a huge attempt for Iris. 42.5 already logged. This is for 45. She's looking good here through 3. I think she's going to get this. This is massive if she can find this rep. Oh my goodness. And it is exactly what we talked about, that rep by rep, the difference is so dramatic. You can look great on rep 4 and not have it on rep 5.
Would she have been a benefit to hold that overhead just for a little bit longer so she's not as fatigued?
It's so hard to know, and this is such a difficult circumstance to practice for. You're never going to be in this situation again where you've done all of those tests at that intensity. She executed the bike flawlessly, and she basically came within a centimeter of being able to complete that set. But sometimes that's how thin the margins are.
Thank you very much. Should have gone heavy on that.
Nice meeting you.
Mia Hesketh attempting 50,
Have a good rest of your day.
but not completing. So 47.5 will be the score from Mia Hesketh. Mila Takiyeva with 50 kilos. So that separator between Takiyeva and Hesketh and the rest of the field. This has been a great heat right across the start to the finish of our 4 workouts.
It truly has been, and with the exception of the bike, new times or scores to beat on all 3 of the other tests.
The Crucible, the finals are complete for heat number 2 of our women. We have got 3 more heats to come before we get to our 5 heats of our men and wrap things up here from Abu Dhabi. Sarah Thompson doing a great job as well. Anastasia Jakovic as well. Some impressive performances.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, right across the board, we saw different athletes excel in different tests, as we would expect. But for me, that heat, even though it was the one score that they didn't break the previous best on, was all about the bike. I mean, that battle was pretty epic. I don't think we're going to see another heat where there's 6 athletes within 3 average wattages across 20 minutes. It's hard. You can't write a script like that.
Oh, things are tight. So let's head down to the competition floor with Jane Obacker.
I'm super lucky right now because I'm joined by both Sarah and Anastasia. They absolutely crushed this whole day. Sarah, how was today for you?
Yeah, do you know what? It was super fun. I haven't done any comps where the events have run kind of back to back. I actually really like it. You only have to warm up once. That's really nice. And yeah, it was a nice combination. I was saying to my judge, I was like, I'm so happy it was the squat at the end, squat at the beginning and not the end, because that would have been rough if they swapped the strict press and the squat.
Imagine finishing with a front squat. Wow. Anastasia, I was watching your bike. It looked like you'd prepared for it. You had a great bike technique. Can you tell me about your training?
I just did some stuff, just some bike, and sometimes some days I already did maybe 3 times a week bike, but I don't know. It was very hard. It was very hard, but I'm not a biker. I just doing bike maybe 3 times a week or so. Yeah.
What about your squats? You definitely look like someone who likes a front squat.
Yeah, I like front squats, my favorite. And front squat, yes, I train for it for 7 reps max. So yeah, for me, I did my goal, 95. Yeah, it was very good. I'm very happy with it. So yeah.
That's awesome. And Sarah, what was your favorite event this weekend?
Do you know what? I'm just happy to be here, to be honest. I've just got back from Ukraine, working there as a combat paramedic. So I haven't been in a gym for the last 3 months. And we can't even run because there's so many drones in the sky. So it's hectic. And I go back in 10 days. And I've got another 8-month tour there. So it's going to be 8 months back of like no showering. And yeah, lots of, it's pretty hectic over there. So I'm just grateful to be here. I'm grateful to have all 4 limbs because a lot of the people I work with don't have that left. So I'm just super stoked to be here, to be honest. I'm just happy.
Absolutely incredible by both of you guys. Well done.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Have a good
Thank
evening.
you very much.
Wow, what an unbelievable story there from Sarah Thompson. We'll dive into that a little bit more in a minute. But here we have our provisional leaderboard for the women's day number 2 after the second heat. And Anastasia Jasovic has put herself right up into the number 1 spot. Obviously, those 95 kilograms on the squats set her up for success. Sarah Thompson there in 3rd, which is unbelievable when you consider she's spent the last 10 months in Ukraine, not being able to run, only being able to do indoor fitness. What a woman. But I know that you, Ed, have been breaking down a little bit of Sarah Thompson's stuff as well.
I have. We're actually going to get to Sarah Thompson's in just a bit, Lauren, because I kind of want to work through this series of how this event played. I mean, what that story about Sarah Thompson makes a lot of sense now with the context of what she just told us. But I'd actually, if you don't mind, Lauren, can I start with Mia Hesketh's
Yeah,
front
we'll
squat?
go for Mia Hesketh.
This is really good, guys. Let's pay attention here. The upright torso is a key component to the front squat. And notice how upright Mia stays the whole time. We're just going to pause after this rep because I want to talk about that. Because the front squat, unlike the back squat, is if the body falls forward at all, that bar is coming down. So let's play this as we go through. I want to talk about what contributes to a great upright torso. So we'll play this through. She's going to stand up out of here. Again, upright torso. She's going to hit the next rep, down and up. And we're going to pause on this last rep. Now, I'm going to break down a few things. So the question is, how do we get our torso more upright in the front squat? There's a few things that contribute to this. One thing people always say is keep the chest upright. Now, I am not a fan of that cue because rarely is that the fault. One thing I'm looking at here is foot stance, how wide between those 2 feet. Now, pros and cons, the wider the feet are, the more the knees are getting out, which means the more adduction and hip external rotation is required to be there. The other option is that we have these feet in a slightly narrower position, but that requires a really good level of ankle dorsiflexion, if you can see my lovely ankle drawing there. So what Mia has here is both great ankle dorsiflexion. She has great ankle dorsiflexion and she has fantastic hip external rotation, which both allow her to stay upright. So if you just let this play out just one more time, she stands up there. So guys, the answer is to get your torso more upright. It's not about getting the elbows up. It's not about chest up. Those two things typically happen because of something that's happening at the feet and the hips. So that's a place as a coach I always want to look at first. And can we make some improvements with regards to mobility or even just basic setup, which will allow the athlete to have their hips more under their shoulders?
Nice. So Mia Hesketh came into today in 22nd. She finished 6th at the moment. Of course, this is a constantly revoluting leaderboard, but she's put herself in a really solid position to at least jump those 2 spots needed to get into the opportunity to take home a prize pot. And Kate, you obviously have been doing a little bit of digging on Mia Hesketh because to you, she's a slightly less familiar athlete. But off the back of having another child, it's something that you can really relate to, right?
Yes, and we obviously know that she's been to the CrossFit Games in the teams about 4 times now, which is really, really impressive. But then Ed was just telling me about her record snatch back in 2019 in the CrossFit Dubai Championships. And she was one of the first, or one of very few, to snatch 100 kilos, which to me, that's like my deadlift weight. And I find anyone that's snatching triple figures, especially female, just is absolutely incredible. So as an athlete, I just think it's phenomenal, the work that she's put in. And she was actually in a competition back in just December, just gone, and she's back into her weightlifting. So it's great to see.
I love nerding out over the squat because the front squat, of all the squatting variations, the athletes that typically excel best at it are the Olympic lifters. Because if we think about what the clean is essentially moving a bar from the floor and moving yourself into a front squat position. So it requires really good levels of mobility. If we think about the strongest back squatters in the world, the bar is on the back, we typically think about the powerlifting community, right? Not the Olympic lifting community. But there's some very big differences in those two things. In the back squat, we typically see the torso falling more forward, which means that keeping an upright torso in the back squat is not the most important aspect of what creates a really big back squat. So front squats, when they get programmed at competitions, typically we see the Olympic lifting community or those who excel at that format, perform really well in the lift.
Let's move ourselves on to the pull-ups because it was another area where Mia Hesketh excelled. But you took a little look at Sarah Thompson and how she was doing in that implement.
Yeah, so Sarah didn't win the event. And now with the context of what she's been doing in the last 8 months, this is super impressive. The first thing we're going to look at here, we're going to pause this. I want everyone to understand the path of the body. It is not straight up. What actually happens with a pull-up is the body will have to move slightly back and then up. Otherwise, if she pulls straight up, her head is going into the bottom of the bar. The tough thing about this is that while the body is moving back and up, the feet have to remain underneath the hips. So there has to be almost some changing of body angles as she's kind of going through this pull-up. So let's just watch that now as she pulls up. I think she's going to do 3 reps for us here. Notice the body moves back first and then it moves up. But she does a great job of keeping the feet underneath the hips the entire time. So that's the first thing I want to highlight. The second thing I want to highlight is we're going to see some variations in this as we watch people through these pull-ups, but I'm actually talking about the grip on the bar. Everyone has to use a double overhand, but I'm talking about the width of the 2 hands. So if we pause this here for a second and we're just looking at the distance between the 2 hands. Now, we may have athletes who have a wider grip and some with a narrower grip. We're going to play this out now for you. Now, the wider grip is going to mean a shorter range of motion, so the athlete has to move less distance, but the shoulder is in a less stable position, so it's less strong. The narrower stance, which we might see some athletes use, is going to mean a greater range of motion is required for the pull-up, but the shoulder is going to be in a more stable position. So it's a trade-off that the athletes have to think about, and they're going to probably already have some pre-existing strengths based on are they stronger, wider, or narrower. So I love just kind of breaking down the nuances of this lift and how it might help them perform better.
And it's so interesting. And I think those that are coming up in the heats to go probably really appreciate it if they are tuning into the live stream. Well, that was heat number 2, but there are still 2 female heats to come. And no doubt everything is going to change on the leaderboard. Well, welcome back as we look ahead to the next 8 women who are going to be taken on for single modality tests to find out who is going to be the ultimate athlete. Amongst them in 8 and 9, we have 2 women from the United Kingdom in Taylor Howe and Evie Hollis. Although Evie might be better known around these parts, having spent the last 9 years over on these shores. But before we get going, let's head on down to our team member on the floor, Mike Bourne.
In the warm-up area with Evie Hollis, local fan favourite. Evie, you're in the next heat, and if we can take a look down, you're actually doing a bit of a blood flow restriction in your warm-up. Talk us through it.
Basically, I've never done this before until I recently changed coaches. Adam from Training Think Tank has recommended me do this. Basically, it's going to help me prep for the bike, which is later on. So kind of like prepping the legs and getting some blood and stuff in the legs so that although I'm going to wait a long time from warming up to actually doing the bike, hopefully we'll have some form of good effect.
Fingers crossed. And is that the part that you're warming up the most for, the bike, or is there anything else in particular that you're worried about?
I would say, yeah, the bike and the front squat is the main warm-up. I'll just do a few reps of pull-ups. I'm not going to warm up any strict press because we have a lot of time to do that. Pull-ups are kind of my strength, so I only need to do a few of those. And then, yeah, I'll focus on the bike and the front squat.
So calling your shot on the pull-ups, yeah?
Yeah.
Good luck, Evie.
Thank you.
Welcome back. We are progressing through our heats rapidly, and there's been different strategies from different athletes. Evie there going, I don't need to warm up pull-ups because I'm good at them, and strict press, now we got heaps of time at the back end, which you do. But
She's thinking about that bike.
yeah, two camps. You're either pro the test, or do we really have to do the test?
Well, they all have to do 4 different tests, and the journey begins with these front squats. I was just talking with a couple of the athletes from the previous female heat, and they said that front squat is so tough, just like the deadlift. You get 1 attempt. You, of course, anytime you take the competition floor, there's a little bit of time from leaving the warm-up area to doing that first squat, and you really have to be exact with what you choose to do.
Ida Konkanen finishing up in our top 3 after the deadlift yesterday. Great performance from her, 150 kilos.
Yeah, exceptional in the swimming this morning also. And I think, as speaking to her yesterday, she's feeling excited to test the front squat today. So curious to see what she ends up choosing in terms of that one and only attempt that they're going to have for 7 reps on the front squat.
Julia as well. I'm sure she is looking forward to that FTP test as well, doing very well 14 months back.
Yeah, Julia is super experienced in competition, and I think probably an athlete that the more tests we work our way through should just continue to climb up steadily across the leaderboard.
Evie Hollis getting to work. A good way to warm up for your bike is to do some squats. With a massive load, I'm not too sure. Katie Healy, very good in the pool earlier today.
Yeah, we got some big weights on the board. 3 women with 100 plus, but 107.5 for Ida Konkanen. I told you she was excited for this. I didn't know she would go for this big of an attempt. She's got, I think, her final rep here, and she needs to rack the bar. And I mean, we've
excited with that one.
I mean, Dana Perrin put 105 on the bar. I was looking at her in this heat as probably attempting the most weight. Taylor Howe 102.5, but Ida Konkanen 107.5. She was a dark horse I had coming into this weekend, and one of the questions I was unsure of was the front squat. Massive answer there.
5 reps for Perrin in lane number 2. Credit given for reps done if you don't meet the 7 reps.
Well, and there was no reseeding after this morning, but Konkanen had pushed herself up within 3 points of Jess Towell. She was in that 4-5-6 battle, and within touching distance, should one of the top 3 make a mistake, a huge and massive start. She still has that bike to come, which is also it's her favorite discipline of the 3 from triathlon. So we're looking at least 2 good efforts here now from Konkanen of these 4.
Thinking of massive starts, and the start of day number 2 for Ida Konkanen. And 107.5 is the tally to beat. Lauren, that was impressive.
So impressive from Konkanen. She has been proving that she has what it takes to become the ultimate athlete. I'm very interested to see where it's going to stack up in the overall leaderboard. Hopefully we'll get an opportunity to take a little look at that. Yes, of course, right to the top. In fact, this entire heat has found themselves into the top 10. Those red marks indicating who is currently on the floor. Dana Perrin with her 105 and Vicky Campos as well there. Evie Hollis, though, 97.5, a great lift from her. And she mentioned about blood flow restriction and how she was using it to warm up, Ed. Can you shed a little bit of light on that?
Yeah, so blood flow restriction is essentially we're attaching cuffs to the upper extremities of a limb, often abbreviated to BFR. I know why Evie's talking about this because I worked with, one of the good friends working with the same organization, Training Think Tank, for a long time, and these guys are massive on BFR. It's this kind of cheat code that has a lot of back science behind it. Blood flow restriction is used for lots of different things. It's used for rehabilitation. There's some great research on improving hypertrophy. But specifically for this, she was wearing it in the warm-up area pre-bike ride. So I think one of the big benefits that come from this is actually post-blood flow restriction. So you think you put that cuff on nice and tight, you're limiting the amount of blood flow that's actually going to the legs. And then when you take it off, you get this big rush of blood full of oxygen, full of nutrients that's then delivered to the muscle tissues. And it's a great way to have that hit of goodness, all the mechanisms that you need for a bike ride without actually having to work. And that's the key thing. You know, they've got a lot of work coming up. And if they're just sitting on a bike or squatting all the way up until they actually get on the floor, that's excessive fatigue. So we're kind of tricking the body into achieving all those things without actually having to bike ride, without actually having to squat. So this is like high level cheat codes that is cool to see her use.
Hit of goodness. I like it. Exactly what you want. The athlete's going through workout number 6 now, and it is the pull-ups.
Could she look any more relaxed right now?
I don't think so.
You know, we saw the focus from Iris and Mia in the previous heat, resting the weight on the platform. And Evie, I mean, even in the interview with Mike, she just looks comfortable out there.
Adjusting the lift station to enable the athletes to get into position. Now that's something you've really got to keep in mind. How much work are you going to be doing at the bottom with your legs, considering you've just done some heavy front squats. You're about to do an FTP test with your legs.
Julia Blazowska here, an athlete who I am expecting to excel in this strict pull-up. It's one of her best disciplines. In terms of what we've seen so far, 23 reps from Mia Hesketh is the best. Kamila Takeva at 20 is the only one besides her to get to 20. But the average amongst across the top 10 so far is 17 reps. We still have the best athletes to come in the next heat. So I'm thinking these athletes should be shooting for 20 plus here.
Evie Hollis doing it easy from the get-go. We're talking about single reps and how difficult a single rep was doing this. Evie just punching out a quick 5. But Paran, the bookends here are doing very well in lanes 9 and 2. Dana Paran and Evie Hollis. Movement standards being noted. Oh, how about that? Paran, simple.
Well, and this technique at the very top of extending the chin with the neck, well, without compromising the position of the body below that, reduces the amount of pull that she has to have while still meeting the standards. That's a very veteran technique.
We go back to what Ed described yesterday with our dips and our eccentric and concentric speed. Paran absolutely nailing that and not spending any more time on the pull-up bar than she needs to. A little bit slower for Evie Hollis to the bottom of your screen. Ida Kontonen in lane 5.
And with Ida there, we're going to see, this is what I expected from her, probably going to be her worst of the 4 scores on the pull-up, but just maximizing her potential across the interval. And behind her in lane number 6, Julia Blazowska is one of those athletes that's going to be pushing the pace here throughout.
Halfway through our time cap on workout number 6, the max pull-ups.
And if you have not been with us before, the foot position relative to the body is critical throughout the rep here. You cannot let the feet drift forward. If the heels come in front of the body, that's when you will get a no rep. So you see the discipline in the lower body from Dana Paran doing it exceptionally here. No movement from the chest down, really. And that makes it easy on her judge.
Doesn't make it any easier for Mia Hesketh, who currently has the best score at 23. Paran. Oh, multiple reps. Simple stuff. She's only 1 behind now with still 45 seconds left on the clock. She's potentially going to go very close to getting 30.
Yeah, and then one athlete we haven't seen a shot of yet in lane 4, Victoria Campos, sneakily right up there with her. She was also one of the athletes to hit 100 plus on that front squat. So Campos in 4, Paran in 2 look like they're going to be the new leaders overall.
Paran with 24. And Campos is going to level that at 24 as well.
And 20 was the number we're looking for, and it looks like a majority of the heat is going to get there. Blazowska, Howe, Havit, and Hollis all already at 20 or more as well.
Athletes working out better ways to do things, watching the heat before. Paran, 26 reps.
Well, we talked about utilizing the entire 3 minutes, and she got that rep right at the buzzer. I would say from beginning to end of that interval, Dana Paran, perfect execution.
And you mentioned it. That's an experienced way to strategize. Workout number 6 to come. Let's head over to the team.
Thanks, Jeremy. Yeah, Dana Paran, Ed, clinical, using every ounce, respecting rest, and putting herself right at the top of that leaderboard when it comes to the pull-ups.
Yeah, Lauren, we're going to break that down in some detail. Not just yet. We're going to come to it later. But there is something that she did that was quite unique that I haven't seen any other athlete do, and it's related to her head position. Rather than looking forward, which is typically how we're taught to execute pull-ups, because it allows us to maintain core tension, she's actually looking up the entire time. And I'm going to show you guys later how that actually allowed her to do, as Jeremy said, this really fast eccentric without getting no reps.
You're just teasing us.
Teasing.
It means you have to stay through the break team, everyone who's watching along. But yes, Dana Paran there, 26 reps, a really impressive display. But also from Victoria Campos, I think a lot of us were so focused on Paran that Vicky Campos's attempt to close in on that 24 maybe went unnoticed. 97 workout points for her.
Our women getting ready. Heat number 2, 4 heats. We'll see the end of our women for the second day of competition at the Crucible Finals. Finding the ultimate athletes. Before they get underway, let's head down to our expert on the floor, Jane Urbacher.
We want to be looking intently at the start of this race. So as soon as they start, let's see what their leg speed is. I'm assuming it's going to be super high. They're going to be out of that saddle, leaning forward, putting the weight into those pedals. Yes, so we could see Ida there. If you saw Ida, if you haven't yet, what I want to explain is what I saw there. She was up out of the saddle doing a perfect race start, which means her leg speed was really high, her hips were level, and that means that the monitor is going to reward her for the next little bit. It's a very, very short and sharp improvement that you'll see in her numbers, but it's definitely something to take advantage of.
Excellent from Jane there, and we have Ida in screen here also making minor adjustments to the damper setting. Earlier heats we saw the damper much higher in the 7 and 8 range, and we said 5 maybe where we would like to see optimal. It looks like she might be a little below that. She wasn't the only one who really leaned into that start. Victoria Campos, Katie Healy, and Dana Paran were the ones on screen. All of them using the race start to their advantage better than we saw from the previous heat.
So let's go back to Dubai Fitness Challenge and something very, very similar. However, the athletes weren't able to select their damper or move it throughout the 20 minutes.
No, they were forced to be on damper 10 the entire time, and even though on paper it's still a 20-minute average watt test, it's a totally different test. This allows for athletes of different skill sets, body types, and experience to maximize their potential on the bike. And just look at the numbers on the screen there. I mean, this is the 200 plus that we were expecting to see. And Katie Healy, who's the favorite to win this for the entire division, at 260 plus to start.
Miranda Rimez not too far behind in 258 as well. So there's some big numbers straight out of the gate. Maintaining that is the issue.
Yeah, and Verena Raymer is a very powerful athlete, and I'm not surprised to see her get out to a start here. What I am looking to see is how she'll be able to maintain that over the duration. On the flip side, Katie Healy, we saw last year win the bike test, but it was only 10 minutes, so she'll also have to answer the double time domain question today.
All bar Paran and Hollis, who did exceptionally well on the pull-ups, all over 200. Ida Konkanen, is she going to do something similar to Iris Rusinov in just that gradual build over the 20 minutes?
I am extremely curious to see that. She's definitely started a little bit lower in terms of average wattage than I was expecting, but you see the finish flag next to her name? We talked about it before. They know what they're doing on the bike.
But the low damper, the low wattage, and they're just going to increase that gradually over the course of the 20 minutes. And I mentioned to you before about how to break down the 20 minutes, whether or not that's in 5-minute segments or what it looks like. And Ida potentially could be doing just that.
Well, it's not the most proud thing for me to say, but I'm usually on par with kind of the women in terms of this type of a test. And I've done this test several times, and the first time I did it, I made a big mistake. And I was trying to go for 270, and I started there, and I could not stay.
Really?
I tapered off.
Surprised.
Ended at 220. Hold, hear me out, Jeremy. I ended in the 220s, and I was miserable. The next time I approached it, after talking to some friends who have more biking background, I started in the 220s, and I was able to log a score in the 270s by climbing up over the duration of the 20 minutes.
Hey, it's all about the climb.
So let's see if Ida Konkanen is able to do something similar. And certainly, as we've said, there's a variety of different ways to attack this, but it is not the It's not a death sentence if you're starting off at the back of the heat, as we saw with Iris in the previous one.
It's not where you start, it's where you finish.
Absolutely.
Katie Healy maintaining that 266. Rimaz dropping down to 243 now. And our two ladies that were under that 200 mark, one is now above. Evie Hollis hitting that 200 and Paran 199. So they're doing the gentle climb forward.
We don't have a ton of athletes in the men's or women's division that did take the 20-minute test for the DFC 14 months ago, but one of those that did is Julia Blazowska. She logged 216 average watts at the forced damper 10, and she's starting here about 20 above that. Now, of course, there's a chance that she's worked on it and improved since then. There's also a chance that being able to adjust the damper setting could be massively advantageous for her compared to her previous result when she was forced to have that resistance. She's one of the smaller and lighter athletes in the field, and overall on that test, the heavier athletes, the taller athletes, definitely excelled when the damper was forced to be higher.
Katie Healy, your current leader on 265 average watts. Let's head down to Jane on the floor.
I hope you are ready to open the biggest can of worms that there is when it comes to the ergs, and that is damper setting. So that dial on the side is known as damper setting. You can see Katie has it here somewhere between that 4 and 5 mark. So what damper setting does, it adjusts what's known as the drag factor, which is the deceleration of the flywheel. This is often referred to as resistance because it feels like resistance, but what it actually is it's the slowing force of the fan. So when we have a higher damper setting, so we can see right next to Katie, Victoria has had it up at 9 up until this point, and she just pulled it down and put it back to a 7. Okay, and so we can see a huge variation there in the fatigue that's coming in. But when we have a higher damper setting, more air is allowed in, which creates a greater feeling of resistance, which means that wheel is coming to more of a stop, which puts more load in the legs. So it's really simulating biking up a very, very big hill here. And so what we can see from Katie is she's maintaining a really steady RPM here with that moderate damper setting. So we can see from her she's able to flush out that lactate a lot quicker than a higher damper setting would actually do.
Thank you, Jane. Let's just close that can of worms for the meantime. We could talk all day long about drag factor and damper settings and resistance.
Well, but I mean, there's only 10 options, and the two women that are next to each other are 5 apart for the beginning 5 minutes of this test. It just goes to show the variety of different approaches that athletes will take to this. And, you know, we don't get a chance to necessarily hear from every single one of them about why they're making those decisions, but you saw with Evie in the warm-up area with Mike that there is a lot of thought put into every decision the athletes are making on the floor.
Now, another thing to note when the athletes are going through their FTP test, they can see exactly on their screen who's leading the FTP test and who is behind them on the FTP test. We haven't got a graphical display of how they're progressing along, but how daunting is that, knowing that you are sitting behind or sitting just ahead of someone and you've got to maintain pace more so than you normally would?
I think it depends on your familiarity with the test and the comfortability or discipline that's required to take on 20 minutes of work. I mean, Konkinen hasn't picked anyone off yet, but she's been moving up from that 205 all the way up to 212, and we still have 13 minutes to go. I'm not going to put it past her to finish in the 230 to 240 range. What I'm curious about is the women that started in the 230 range, if they're going to be able to maintain that, or as we see with Blazowska, who's dipping down almost below that at this point, if it's going to bleed away as we go through the final 10 minutes.
Keep in mind, Julia currently sitting in 3rd position in this heat, just behind Rimaz.
Ramir's another one of those that started in the 260s. She's leveled off into the 230s here, and it could be one of those start fast, taper off, finish fast type of strategies that we saw from Esama Fat in the swim. So there are a lot of different ways to approach this.
Excited to see what the finish looks like for Katie Healy, 265 average watts. Best score we have seen thus far. Taylor Howe making a move too. She's moving up to 229.
And just checking in with our back-end stats over here on the RPMs that Jane was telling about us previously. And Katie Healy, 83, Ida Konkinen, 85. Those are above that 80 threshold that we want to be looking for in terms of maximizing every pedal on the bike.
Only 8 minutes down. And for these athletes, it is going to feel like an eternity to the finish of the 20 minutes. Now you're going to see an increase in intensity across our heats.
Well, yeah, I think so.
I'm hoping we do.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot. I wasn't sure we were gonna finish. No, yes, there's a lot of different things in play. First of all, the athletes in the later heats have already earned this by their performance yesterday. Additionally, while the prize purse here is available for all the women who made it through to day 2, the jumps in prize purse are significant as you get towards the top of the leaderboard. And as we mentioned with Ida Konkanen, even after the swim this morning, there's been a great shakeup on the top of the leaderboard. She's moved up several places with just one event. So in this heat and the next heat, now you're talking about the athletes that are fighting for top 10 positions. And 4 tests out here at once, which means half of the scores remain. So huge amounts of risk that these athletes really should be taking because the payoff is massive. And at the other end, it's, you're making money either way. So if you're thinking about it from a financial perspective, I'm expecting risks to be taken, and that would result in increased intensity.
Increased intensity, exactly what we're after. Vicky Campos at 218 average watts, and with a 4th place finish in the front squat and a 2nd place finish in the pull-ups. And we had a chance to catch up with her yesterday.
How does it feel to be here at the Crucible right now, and how do you feel going into the competition?
It feels good. A little bit jet lag. It was a long flight. I'm used to traveling and being in a different place. So training was really good leading up to here, and I feel really strong right now.
Why do you put yourself through competitions like this? What's your drive?
I don't know, I just love competing. Just been doing it for so long, maybe I just don't know how to not be on the competition floor. So just test myself, and it keeps me training, it gives me some goals, and then I can just train for that. Like I said, I've done that bike test. I might stand a lot. That's it. I don't really I've never done it before. So I'll do a good part of it standing and try to sit down sometimes, and then just play around with it. Stay at above a certain watt, which I'm not even sure what I can do, but what I've watched the girls, they can hold a really good pace on this one. So I'm just gonna have to try to hang out. I hope we're a little bit closer. I can see all other people next to me are at. I don't know. We'll see.
Love the fact that she just wants to hang with the other girls. But Vicky Campos hasn't budged too much. 215, 216, that's been very consistent. Just below her on your leaderboard to the far left of screen, Ida Konkanen gradually making her way. Brian, spot on with exactly what she was going to strategize.
Yeah, we'll see. Just during that 1-minute clip from Campos, she went from 217 to 220. So she's been steadily climbing up while pretty much everyone else above her in the heat has been drifting back, with one major exception, which is Katie Healy, who surged to 265 and has literally not budged from that number this entire time. This is a totally different caliber of attacking this test. What I'm curious about is if she knows this is good enough to win, or if she's going to push in the last few minutes.
Let's hope she can push in the last few minutes. This would be incredible.
We would love to see it, Back in the DFC, Uda Lundekvam out of Norway won that with 287, and so I think that Katie Healy has something similar to that in her if she wants it. But that test was in isolation, and it was at the start of a competition. This test is different for many different reasons, and Katie Healy, as with all these women, is in a battle for top 10 positions, for prize money, and trying to maximize her performance across 4 different disciplines, not just this one. So even if there is one woman in the last heat who's able to beat her, I don't think there's going to be 2. And a 2nd place finish here compared to a 1st, if it means 5 different places, remember, the margins are so small on that strict press. So I think Katie Healy would actually be advised to just coast it in at the 260-ish mark.
Taylor Howe at 230 now, making her way up, as is Ida Konkanen at 222. More on that. Let's head down to Jane.
Everything that is happening here for Ida is what, as a coach, I love to see. Her body position is great. Her leg speed is fantastic. Her RPM has been consistently over 85. And what we've seen from her average watts is they're steadily climbing as she's actually going through this effort. So from a coaching perspective, this is exactly what we want to see. Something else I want to demystify for everybody at home is what those watts actually mean in terms of pace per 1,000 metre or calories per hour, which is the normal screens that we actually see when we're on the ergs. And so when we're looking at a 200 watt average, the numbers that we'd actually see on the screen if we were looking at distance is about a 208 per 1,000 meters in terms of that pace. And in terms of calories per hour, we're looking between 900 and 950. So what Ida is holding here right now with a 224 average watts, she's holding faster than a 205 average pace and over about 1,000 calories an hour. So a really steady pace. But something I want everyone to keep a really good eye on is that her RPM is staying really steadily over that 85, and we can see that that's paying off as time goes on.
And we're just into the final 6 minutes here, so the last 30% or so of this test. And I think that with the strategy that she's shown that she's been implementing here, which is honestly exactly like Iris and just at a different threshold, that number is going to end up in the 230s.
Okay. The last 5 minutes, potentially the hardest 5 minutes of the FTP test. And Konkinen continuing that slow progress, now to 225. Howe remaining solid on 230, and Katie Healy only dropping 1 watt so far. That's been incredible.
Yeah, like I said, you know, being able to go up there and stay there for the entire time, different caliber than we see across the board. She said this morning that, you know, everyone knows that she's good at this, but that can be very nerve-wracking, and she was, in fact, nervous for it. But I think once the test started, she just feels at home on that bike.
Tiny bit of body movement left to right, but it is working for her. Just another drop down for Katie Healy, 263 now. Taylor Howe increasing by 1. Rima's constant on the 233, but Konkinen continuing that slow climb.
And there is Verena Reimers, and we talked about that. We know that she has the power, and although she did that aggressive start and tapered off into the 230, she hasn't given very much away. She's definitely into the pain that we talked about now, and this is where the mental fortitude dips in. I actually spent a week with Verena in Australia prior to the Torian Pro, and mindset is something that she's continuously working on, and coming into this bike test was something that she wanted to practice here in the last part of getting to a place where she was and proving to herself that she could stay there despite the discomfort.
Well, that's the hardest thing, isn't it? You get into a test like this, it's 20 minutes, it's a grind, everyone's going through it. You've just got to be able to push beyond the limits that you think you've got.
Yeah, and she's in a bit of a battle now here. I mean, when we talk about the previous heat, 210 was the best score that we saw. So this heat has really upped the caliber, and Verena's right there at the top. I mean, I'm counting Katie Healy as an outlier against the field. Verena beating the rest of a very accomplished field right now. But in these last 3 minutes, she's going to get a push from Howe, and I still think Konkinen is going to drive it home in the last 3.
As Jane said, that leg speed, exceptional.
And one of the other things you see from here is the body position is primarily forward. She doesn't have most of her body on the seat. She's just on the tip of it there so that she can get a lot of the force into each drive of the pedal. And Konkinen, to me, is maximizing everything she can do here.
3 minutes remaining. And 1 heat remaining after this for our women. We are going to crown the ultimate athletes after 2 grueling days. We go back to our 3 workouts yesterday. Short time frame, but very taxing. The pool this morning, and then 4 workouts to finish day number 2.
Yeah, and it's the test at the Crucible has evolved year after year. It started with 3. It grew to 5. This year we have 2 days, 8 total scores on the board. And this bike test also evolving. 10 minutes last year for max meters. This year 20 minutes for average watts. And we're going to get a pretty tight battle here at the end for the 2, 3, and 4 in this heat. And those can be precious points. And Taylor Howe, we haven't seen much of her on camera this heat, but she's been lurking around that 230 mark. She's closed within 1 of Reimers, who's right next to her, so they have a kind of a good pulse of where the other one's at. And Taylor, very experienced athlete. We mentioned it earlier that her and Reggie have been running 3 times a week, and the capacity for both of them has really shown through the run and the swim, and we get to see it here for her on the bike as well.
I'm speaking to Kate and also Jane about capacity, and doing an FTP test like this is going to increase your capacity in other elements.
Absolutely, it will. Well, I've been doing some biking, and it hasn't paid off in terms of my push-ups, though.
More bench press required for you, Brian. But Taylor, 2:32, just behind Verena and Katie Healy, dropping another watt, but still 2:62. That is an incredible score. And the last minute is going to tell the story. Where is Katie Healy currently at?
And it's getting tight here. I'm really looking at Raymer. She ticked it up from 2:33 to 2:34. It had only been going down up to this point. She's moved it back up, but the definite story of this heat is Katie Healy.
And still remaining steady. Are we going to see a change in speed for the final 30 seconds? And speaking to a number of the athletes over the course of the last couple of days, they were either very pro or very anti workout number 7. Katie Healy, definitely one of those in the pro camp. And looking forward to it. The speed now increasing 2:63. Can she get back up to 2:65? The judge letting her know she's got 30 seconds. It is time to go. Taylor Howe at 2:33. Remez at 2:35. Your 1, 2, and 3 from heat number 3.
And Konkinen over 2:30 and now 2:31 for the first time. Final push here. A lot can change in these last couple seconds.
2:64 from Katie Healy. She's going to bring this home with an exceptional result. Unbelievable. Katie Healy, from what she achieved in the pool this morning, and backs it up. Unbelievable performance. Lawrence Smith, gobsmacked.
Oh, she's just a wonder, isn't she? Like, her capacity to do these endurance-based events is unrelenting. She said at the pool, actually, that this was something she was going to look forward to, Kate. But her history says that this is her wheelhouse.
Well, she seems to have taken on every sport, I think, and has got quite a sporting background. But she also has done a couple of Hyroxes. I think in her first Hyrox Pro, she actually did a 1:11, which is really impressive, especially at your pro. In the same weekend, she then went on to win the women's doubles too. So I think that just shows the translation between an endurance athlete when they can, you know, transfer it into another sport. So she's obviously very, very good at Hyrox and coming up in that, but I think it's obviously helped her in this bike, and she won it last year, the bike here at the Crucible.
Not just that, but I think recovery off the basis of an effort like that, Ed, she's going to be much better at getting herself set and ready to go once more.
Yeah, absolutely. I think something that we just briefly talked about is, well, what do the athletes do between finishing the bike erg and then doing their first strict press?
I'm sorry, Evie Hall is there. That facial.
Yeah. She's in pain. I mean, this is the thing, you know, when you empty the tank, you are expecting the athletes to be in a world of hurt. But when we talk about recovery, we're seeing athletes peel themselves off the floor right now. But when we talk about recovery, actually the best thing to do is to get up off the floor and start moving. We want blood flowing through the legs because that's where it's going to be hurting, and we want the aerobic system moving that lactate around. So yeah, it's good to see some of these girls up and moving.
Look at this though. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, all up into the top 10. That's pretty much the entire field from that heat. 6 going straight into the top 6. It's the best that we have seen so far, but I don't think there is any woman on this floor that is going to be able to top Katie Healy with the 265 average watts. That was spectacular from our Irish woman.
Just got my breath back, Brian, from seeing what Katie Healy did.
We're actually more out of breath than she is. Look at that. She's already got weight on the bar and moving it. She just smashed the field by 30 watts, and she's moving the bar where everyone else is just figuring out where they're at.
So we spoke about earlier about how many times you're going to lift for the 5RM strict press, which is the final workout of the Crucible finals. You don't want to leave anything in the tank and nothing to question later on, but how much is too much?
Well, these women have earned the later heats here, and so they've gotten to see what the first half of their division has done. And I think there's two principles here. One is get a good lift on the board. So whenever you're ready, whenever you can, establish a score so that you get a score. From that point forward, you have to consider what you are feeling like currently, and then where the field's at. And at this point in the competition, it's worth it to take a little risk, I think, because if you can get past that 45 kilo mark for 5, it's really going to pay dividends. But even though it's 15 minutes long, you only have so many attempts in you. And I think that by the 3rd attempt, you should be going for the score that you want to have.
Camilla Takayeva with the score to beat of 50 kilos, which is signified in red at the top left of your screen. Rimez doing exactly what you suggested, Brian, and getting a score on the board immediately.
Verena Reimers is a very good upper body presser in general, and you see here what she's really practicing is having good discipline with that body position. So I really like this from her. It's not just getting a lift on the board, but it's dialing in to the standards that need to be met.
And not just that, the speed of the concentric and eccentric, getting that bar out of her hand so she can recover a little bit and use that full 15 minutes to benefit.
Yeah, minimize the time under tension once you get it off the bar.
Katie Healy knows she's got to get around that 50 kilo mark or more to put herself in a good position with 1 heat remaining.
Well, it's 2.5 kilo jumps that the women can make. We've seen a bit of a pile up at 45. Above 45 so far, we've only got Mia Hesketh, 47.5, and Camilla Takayeva at 50. So if you can get to 47.5, that's a good score on the strict press relative to this field, at least so far.
Ricky Campos going big early, and I think this home with an exceptional result. Unbelievable. Katie Healy, from what she achieved in the pool this morning, and backs it up. Unbelievable performance. Lawrence Smith, gobsmacked.
Oh, she's just a wonder, isn't she? Like, her capacity to do these endurance-based events is unrelenting. She said at the pool, actually, that this was something she was going to look forward to, Kate. But her history says that this is her wheelhouse.
Well, she seems to have taken on every sport, I think, and has got quite a sporting background. But she also has done a couple of high roxes. I think in her first High Rocks Pro, she actually did a 111, which is really impressive, especially at your pro. In the same weekend, she then went on to win the women's doubles too. So I think that just shows the translation between an endurance athlete when they can, transfer it into another sport. So she's obviously very, very good at high rocks and coming up in that, but I think it's obviously helped her in this bike, and she won it last year, the bike here at the Crucible.
Not just that, but I think recovery off the basis of an effort like that, Ed, she's going to be much better at getting herself set and ready to go once more.
Yeah, absolutely. I think something that we just briefly talked about is, well, what do the athletes do between finishing the bike erg and then doing their first strict press?
I'm sorry, Evie Hall is there. That facial.
Yeah. She's in pain. I mean, this is the thing, when you empty the tank, you are expecting the athletes to be in a world of hurt. But when we talk about recovery, we're seeing athletes peel themselves off the floor right now. But when we talk about recovery, actually the best thing to do is to get up off the floor and start moving. We want blood flowing through the legs because that's where it's going to be hurting, and we want the aerobic system moving that lactate around. So yeah, it's good to see some of these girls up and moving.
Look at this though. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, all up into the top 10. That's pretty much the entire field from that heat. 6 going straight into the top 6. It's the best that we have seen so far, but I don't think there is any woman on this floor that is going to be able to top Katie Healy with the 265 average watts. That was spectacular from our Irish woman.
Just got my breath back, Brian, from seeing what Katie Healy did.
We're actually more out of breath than she is. Look at that. She's already got weight on the bar and moving it. She just smashed the field by 30 watts, and she's moving the bar where everyone else is just figuring out where they're at.
So we spoke about earlier about how many times you're going to lift for the 5RM strict press, which is the final workout of the Crucible finals. You don't want to leave anything in the tank and nothing to question later on, but how much is too much?
Well, you know, these women have earned the later heats here, and so they've gotten to see what the first half of their division has done. And I think there's two principles here. One is get a good lift on the board. So whenever you're ready, whenever you can, establish a score so that you get a score. From that point forward, you have to consider what you are feeling like currently, and then where the field's at. And at this point in the competition, it's worth it to take a little risk, I think, because if you can get past that 45 kilo mark for 5, it's really going to pay dividends. But even though it's 15 minutes long, you only have so many attempts in you. And I think that by the 3rd attempt, you should be going for the score that you want to have.
Kamila Takayeva with the score to beat of 50 kilos, which is signified in red at the top left of your screen. Rimez doing exactly what you suggested, Brian, and getting a score on the board immediately.
Verena Reimers is a very good upper body presser in general, and you see here what she's really practicing is having good discipline with that body position. So I really like this from her. It's not just getting a lift on the board, but it's dialing in to the standards that need to be met.
And not just that, the speed of the concentric and eccentric, getting that bar out of her hand so she can recover a little bit and use that full 15 minutes to benefit.
Yeah, minimize the time under tension once you get it off the bar.
Katie Healy knows she's got to get around that 50 kilo mark or more to put herself in a good position with 1 heat remaining.
Well, it's 2.5 kilo jumps that the women can make. We've seen a bit of a pile up at 45. Above 45 so far, we've only got Mia Hesketh, 47.5, and Kamila Takayeva at 50. So if you can get to 47.5, that's a good score on the strict press relative to this field, at least so far.
Vicky Campos going big early, and I don't mind that either. It's going to minimize the amount of lifting you need to do.
Another good presser and a different strategy than we've seen from most. She's eclipsed that 45 mark as her opening lift, and the standards, if the women on the floor are taking note of that, have just changed.
Composure of the athletes going through the 5RM strict press, the movement standards and the judging standards just as strict.
And this is a really great shot of the head position. So Taylor Howe is pulling her chin back, trying to create like a double or triple chin so that the bar can pass forward without leaning back in the shoulders. And that is a very strict cue that the judges have gone over, and then the judges have been talking to their athletes about. If they see the shoulders lean back, it's a no rep, but you can and should be getting your head out of the way.
Ida Konkanen, 45 on the bar, and a very wide grip as well, trying to probably shorten that range of movement a little bit.
The athlete's going to be strong in different positions. You know, we talked about at WFP finals with Andrea Solberg in the deadlift. I just feel strong with my feet close together. If you feel stronger, wider, that can be great here, especially if you have long arms so you don't have to press as high. I remember way back when they had a set of 64 pull-ups at regionals that I saw Tommy Hackenbrook match Chris Spieler with a grip that was about as wide as you can go so that he reduced his range of motion, and that's what she's trying to do here.
The ladies with 8.5 minutes remaining. And poor old Evie Hollis coming off that bike. Those legs didn't want to do anything.
And we see what we saw earlier, pushing that bar out in front rather than moving the head back, and it just makes the weight so much heavier and Healy unable to get that rep up from that position.
52.5. 5 reps.
Still plenty of time for our ladies on the floor. Diana Paran, 55 coming up after bagging a 35. Now that's a massive jump.
It is, but Dana, as we know, winner of the deadlift, second on the front squat so far. She's a strength athlete, and she needs to bake the points here. So I think sending a statement. Campos first to strike, though, 52.5 here.
Super comfortable. Vicky getting that done. Jumping from 47.5 to 52.5. And potentially one more lift remaining for Vicky with 7.5 minutes.
I think definitely. That looked very smooth. I don't want to say it was easy. It looked nice, to quote Mika Lilliorg. But look at those 45s piling up. Katie Healy, Ida Konkanen, Verena Reimers, Evie Hollis, to add to 3 others that we've already seen. So I'm still standing by that if you can get to 47.5, you're doing yourself big favors. Again, no tie break on this one.
35 kilos for Taylor Howe, and the only lift she has done thus far. Resting sufficiently, maybe only one more lift.
Yeah, and Taylor put a big effort in on that bike, so she might be needing the extra time to recover before going for a lift that's more in her range. We know she can do more weight than that.
Oscar loading up 42.5. You mentioned the bottleneck at 45. There's going to be a lot of athletes around that realm. Taylor getting to work now. 45 kilos for Taylor Howe. Bottom of your screen. Rimaz with a 50.
And this lift alone, taking her from 35 to 45, is basically going to jump her up into a tie with that huge group, but also pass by another 8 athletes. What I'm curious to see is she has only 6 minutes left. So what I'm expecting from Taylor Howe here is that whatever she feels comfortable that she can do, she's probably going to be attempting it with 90 seconds or left remaining in the interval.
Julia using everything she has got to get that final rep done. Oh, Paran, this is easy.
Well, and we had thought she was going to go for 55. It currently says she's attempting 50, so maybe a little calculated decision here, knowing that 50 would be a good score, and giving herself still an interval if she wants to take one more shot at it as we get towards that final minute.
Konkanen with 47.5 kilos. Looking pretty comfortable under that barbell as well. Paran in the box seat to potentially go to 52.5 and take the lead.
And we knew that Konkanen would be good on the bike. She's got the 4th best score so far. She really impressed us on the front squat where she has the top score. We knew she'd take a hit on the pull-ups, so this is a big lift for her, and she was unable to get that. I think she's got one more chance, and she's going to have to be perfectly exact and maybe even a little lucky to get that lift when she goes for it again.
The final 5 minutes of the Crucible finals for heat number 3 of our women.
Didn't get a chance to see it, but Verena Ramers has been very sneaky in this heat, and she put 50 on the board also. So that's tied for second across all of the division, to go with her 2nd place on the bike and 7th and 8th on the first 2 tests. So Ramers climbing up the leaderboard a lot on the last 4 workouts of this 8 workout test.
Hollis, the pull was good for the pull-ups. The press, a bit of a battle. Katie Healy going for that 45. And you mentioned 2.5 kilo jumps in regards to strict press. That is a lot of weight to jump every single time.
It is, and it's the minimum weight that you can make a jump. So, you know, that's why you saw Mia Hesketh say, you know, maybe I could do 48. She's talking about half a kilo, but 2.5 kilos was not within her realm of possibility. But a good job with Katie there. The difference between 45 and 42 on the leaderboard is significant.
And the bottleneck continues at 45 kilos. Let's head down to Mike on the floor.
Okay, down here on the floor. I was just stood behind Julia Blasiowska. She just walked up to me and said, I really feel my shoulders from the bike. Now, obviously, most people think that they are just going to feel the legs, so possibly that's something that Jane can talk about in the next segment, about the positioning and how much weight they're putting through the arms. Because for someone to really feel their shoulders off the bike, I would feel is quite unusual. But she's taking extra rest periods now to try and obviously make sure that she's fresh and ready for probably what's going to be her final attempt.
Thanks, Mike. And shoulder fatigue from an FTP test, and Verena just not able to get that last one done. That would have put her into the lead overall, 52.5. I'm not sure she's going to have enough time to recover and lift again. She knows exactly how close it was.
It's that final centimeter that we were talking about. It was the exact same thing, 4.5 reps in, and you just didn't have it. Actually, when she re-racked after the 4th one was the first time that there was a deviation in the way that she was breathing and moving, and it was just that close for Verena Ramers.
Vicky Campos, 55. This is going to be a massive separator. And some great lifting. Vicky Campos, 55 kilos, straight into the lead. And a 5 kilo gap between herself and Kamila Takiyeva. Now, what does Dana Paran sit there at the end in lane number 2, washing on? Does she have a crack? Katie Healy under pressure to go a little bit more. Where do the ladies go from here? Taylor Howe going for just that little bit more, 47.5.
Yeah, we haven't seen this kind of cat and mouse game yet. It hasn't been as tight of heats, but they're definitely looking left and right and kind of figuring out what can I do, what did she do, what do I need to do as this 15 minutes wears on and the legs are feeling better and they're actually able to tap into their potential with the press.
Not sure if you heard that on our mics, but Taylor Howe letting out a yelp, a second yelp coming, and she knew that last rep was going to take a fair bit to get up.
And I mean, if this was a 4 rep instead of 5 rep, these numbers would look totally different. How many athletes have we seen get to 4.5 and be unable to just clear the last part of the head?
Confident, not going to get that anywhere close to overhead.
It's too far forward. Same thing we've seen before. Once that weight comes out, every centimeter or millimeter even that it comes forward, instead of just moving the chin out of the way, the weight amplifies in how heavy it feels relative to what it should feel like.
Paran going for a 52.5, and it looks as though she has got the 52.5 and will move her into second place overall. Campos, Paran, and now Takiyevi, your top 3. And Hollis again not able to get that one. 30 seconds remain. 3 reps remaining for Campos.
Shit. Yeah, I got heavy.
Close. But it will keep her at the top of the leaderboard. And Paran, Vicky Campos matching 52.5. Numes. And just the no reps starting to creep in. Brian, you mentioned it, that just torso position changing ever so little, but the judges straight on it.
Yeah, but overall a great heat there. We saw 3 women with 47.5, so they'll break past that deadlock at 45. And again, you know, the new scores to beat are continuing to pile up here in heat number 3.
Thank you.
Campos and Paran with 52.5 kilos in the bank.
You know, we're never
and
happy.
third place currently is
We're never happy with that.
Takiyeva on 50 kilos as we head towards our
elite,
4th
it's
and
very
final
low.
female heats.
Thank you. Do I need to
Great
sign?
performance. Yes, you do. Thank you.
Campos
Thank you so much. Lovely
signing
seeing you.
her life away.
How's it going?
Yeah, good to see you again.
Happy to be here. Happy to travel to be here as well. She said she's very well traveled.
That's such a curious situation also. They just logged 4 scores. They'd only had 4 scores previous to that. So usually after the final workout, you have a pretty good idea where you're going to shake up on the final leaderboard. But right now, it's sit back and watch how and see how the last heat of women do, because a lot can change.
It sure can. Let's head down now to the competition floor. Jane Earthbacker.
Ida, a fantastic day today and yesterday. Huge deadlifts, huge front squat. Yep. Also saw an amazing bike effort. Yep. Can you tell me how the weekend's been for you?
Quite okay. The sleeping hasn't been very good, so a little bit like jet lag, but yeah, it's life. Nah, nothing's major bad. Yeah.
You're currently sitting definitely in top 10 right now. You're doing great with the points. Yeah. Can you tell me which event has been your favorite?
Maybe the bike event. It was like tactical. Some people came out too hot. Some people came out too slow. Maybe I came out a little bit slow, a little bit careful. But I think it's great event, by the way.
Your bike was unreal. I was watching it very, very closely. It looked like you were just getting into a rhythm at that 20 minutes. Were you expecting it to go a little bit longer?
Yeah, if I had to go 5 minutes longer, I think I would have kept the base going. But I think I did very good, like uprising pace. Yeah.
Incredible athlete. You've had a great weekend. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Ida Konkanen there, second overall in that heat. But the leader was Vic Campos, and she really sealed that with her 55 kilogram strict press right at the end there. Ed, this is a woman that you know better than most.
Yeah, so cool. I mean, we had a little interview with her just on screen there. She's talking about her mindset coming into this weekend. And I messaged her last night just to congratulate her on a great day one. And she confirmed what I thought, which was I'm just kind of here to have fun. Haven't really been taking my training all that seriously, but it just feels really good to be back out on the competition floor. And what I love about Vic between all the events is she has this massive smile on her face. She's having a laugh. She's encouraging the other athletes. And then a massive strict press. I mean, hate to, throw myself under the bus, but I think that's a bigger strict press than me. She just recently put up some really impressive stuff with handstand push-ups, which is a relative strength test for her going to these really crazy deficits. So I've always known her upper body pressing and pulling capacity is really good relative to people in her field, but a 55 kg strict press with these standards is insanely impressive. So very cool, Vic.
Well, with these standards, but also 5 kilograms on top of Kamila Takieva's weight to beat, and with one heat still to come, that's so important.
Yeah, it's so important. Brian just said it there. The interesting thing about the Crucible that's so unique to other competitions is we've just done 4 events. That is 50% of the total events at the Crucible, and now there's going to be massive shakeups in leaderboard, and no one knows what's happening. So we're kind of all just sitting tight to be like, what does that actually mean in terms of overall standing? So I think that is a really cool feature of this competition.
It really is indeed. Let's look at how this heat has shaken up the overall leaderboard. And oh my gosh, hasn't it just? This was not what I was expecting when I was mathing in my head, but that entire heat now fill out the top 8. And Taylor, how they're coming into 3rd with another great lift on the strict press. Ida Konkanen there in 2nd. It's really mixed things up. And whilst we saw Katie Healy with the most spectacular bike, a couple of deficits in other areas has meant that she hasn't made it into the top 3. But I do want to focus on Dana Paran. She's now sat 7th overall. But we saw her excel, Kate, at a couple of individual moments, including the front squats, the pull-ups, and then 2nd in the strength tests. What do we know of her? Why has this played out so well, but perhaps not reflected on the overall leaderboard?
She also came 1st in the deadlifts with that 155, which was absolutely phenomenal. So she has definitely excelled in the strength. Unfortunately, the aerobic side, so the bike, the run and the swim has hit her a little bit. That's why she has dropped down a bit on the leaderboard. But resilience and determination, this lady she's got buckets of it. Yeah. So she actually had an accident in 2017, which meant she's got a lot of plates in her foot now. And when she came back to competing, she was actually in the adaptive section of competing, and she's worked her way back up. So it makes what she's doing out there even more impressive.
Speaking of impressive, Ed, should we break down what she was doing on her pull-ups?
We absolutely should, Lauren. So here we have Dana Paran on screen, and really impressive for an athlete to be able to be so strong in the lower body test to be doing this on the upper body test. So first thing I want to show you guys hold is this eye position. Oh, I'm going to put that the other way. I honestly think this is a massive contributor to how she was so good at the pull-ups. Now, typically we are taught to have our eyes actually not looking up. We're taught to look forward, which allows us to maintain a nice hollow body position. However, we know that the standards of this event are quite tough, and we know that the body needs to stay in this straight, slightly extended position. So she's obviously practiced this, but what she does really well, she actually looks, keep on doing that, she actually looks up, and what that allows her to do is to maintain the slight extension through the spine, which keeps her feet underneath the body at all times. So let's actually watch this play out for 3 repetitions. Straight down, I stay up. I love it. Okay, now she's going to take a break here. So the next thing I want us to look at is we talked about grip position in the previous heat. So she's taken a wider grip, which allows for a shorter range of motion. And what that allows her to do is to have, combined with the eyes looking up in the extended position, a really fast eccentric. Now, most of the other athletes are doing a really slow eccentric because they are worried about that plate swinging and the feet moving at the bottom. But because of this optimal alignment in the setup, she can save a lot of energy on the downward portion of her rep, which allows her to use more energy on the pull. So a really cool small observation I saw on the pull-ups that I think really contributed to her taking top spot in that event.
Yeah, unbelievable. Looked very cool to watch. Now, Katie Healy, she was one that stood out on the bike, and we knew just by looking back on previous events she was going to do well in something like this, Kate. But as a Hyrox athlete yourself, is your kind of training actually building towards success on an FTP test like that?
I mean, it's definitely going to help. I would say that any high rocks athlete who has that kind of endurance base is going to be good at a test like that, or have an advantage in that test. They're going to be good at clearing the lactate out of their blood. So I think she was bound to do very well. I think she had a very good record, didn't she, that one of you guys knew about when she was running?
Well, she did certainly very well on the run. It was an 11th on the shuttle run, and that was a pretty impressive in the field of athletes that we have out there. Ed, you broke down this bike. What was she doing so well?
All right, so let's have a look. Now, I'm going to give credit to Jane Urbacher, who has been totally nerding out with me on the bike erg. I've learned so much. But one of the things I want us to look at here is the handlebars relative to the seat height. So what we're seeing here is that the handlebars are slightly above the seat, ever so slightly. Now, let's get nerdy on this for a second. What we often see in road biking, so when we're watching something like Tour de France, you might actually see the handlebars being lower than the seat. You can imagine that athlete in that hunched over position. And that is because they're trying to be as aerodynamic as possible. Now, however, on the bike erg, that does not play into the actual event because it's a stationary bike. So the problem is, if the handlebars are too low relative to the seat, it's going to mean that all the weight is actually going through the upper body, which is going to mean that it's going to be harder for the athlete to get leg drive. Similarly, if the handlebar is too high relative to the seat, that's going to mean that all the load is placed through the saddle, and that's going to make it really hard to create that downward pressure on the legs. So what I really like about this is just that slightly higher than the seat allows her to keep more weight through the pedals, which allows her to maintain that really high average watts by being able to drive down and recruit those hamstrings at all times. So for those at home who do bike erging, in the setup, it's super important. Think about where that handlebar sits relative to the seat, and we're looking really for either level or slightly higher with the handlebars. Really, really cool. I'm sure that contributed to why she had such a great score.
She had an unbelievable score. And having done this myself yesterday, I can truly appreciate the fact that she held a 149 for every single split. And the woman herself is down with the bike erg nerd herself. Jane Urbacher is with Katie.
Poor Katie Healy has been trying to recover here, and I found her because I was desperate to talk to her about her incredible bike effort. So Katie, I would love to know, what does training look like for you on the ergs?
So I don't really train ergs that much. It's like it's just my strength. So recently, like the last probably 6 to 8 weeks, probably 8 weeks, I have been just solely concentrated on gymnastics because that's like my weakness. So I turned to my coach like probably 6 weeks ago. I was like, can we start doing some bike because I'm not doing any? And he just puts like conditioning probably once or twice a week of erg work, but like mixed with gymnastic stuff. And he was like, okay, yeah, we'll just touch it once a week. So on a Thursday morning, I did like bike session for the last 6 weeks. That's it. I don't really touch the bike because, yeah, it's my strength.
Absolutely insane. Great work.
Thank you.
Well, we have one final heat to come, and it is going to decide the overall leaderboard and who's going to take home that $50,000. And we have a stacked start list. Let's take a little look at who is going to take to the floor next. Look at that. Those central fields, 5 and 6. Astrid Tin, Jamie Simmons. We've got Jessie Smith out of the USA, Emily DeRoy from Australia. Jess Tal, she sneaks in there as our resident High Rocks athlete. But Lacey McKenzie, lane number 2. we had an opportunity to catch up with the woman herself. Mike Bourne has more.
Back in the warm-up area with Lacey McKenzie. You can see she's on the bike, getting those watts up. You had a great swim this morning. I think you PR'd your swim technically by probably about a minute or so.
I guess technically, yeah. Yeah.
And now we're warming up for all the remaining events. So we've got 4 different disciplines. What discipline are you looking forward to the most, and what discipline worries you the most?
I'm probably most looking forward to either the bike or the squat, because I'm just going to test myself and see what I can do. And then I'm most looking, worried about the pull-up.
Pull-up because of what reason?
I've got really dodgy elbows, so flexion extension just sucks for me. Hopefully I'll be able to stay in the mix, so it's with that move.
Well, you're in the final heat, so you're right up there on the leaderboard. So hopefully you can stay up and maybe work yourself up even more.
Let's hope so.
Good luck for the rest of the day.
Thank you very much. Cheers. Thank you.
And we're getting ever so close to finding out who is going to be our ultimate athlete at the Crucible finals. Lacey McKenzie, part of that conversation, and Anthony and Elliot coaching Lacey. And she said, dodgy elbows, that's not going to bode well for the pull-up portion of what's coming. But there's 3 other workouts in order to get up that leaderboard.
Absolutely. Half of the workouts remain for this final heat. 3 points separate the top 3 women, and the jumps from first to fifth are $10,000 each. So massive implications across each of these 4 disciplines.
What a way to make money, hey?
Have a little fun, work hard. I mean, it might look painful in the moment, but the check makes it worth it, huh?
Doesn't it, Watts? Our ladies making their way onto the floor. Jessie Smith, front and centre in the background. It is the Australian Emily DeRoy coming in 3rd in the swim earlier today and jumping herself into contention for some big money.
Yeah, she's one that sits 3 points off the leader after yesterday, Astrid Tind, who's tied with Jamie Simmons after this morning. They were 10th and 15th and gave away those points, and we'll see straight away with the front squat probably another big swing here. 7 reps, 1 attempt, 90 seconds, which none of these women will need, but they have to make a very calculated decision about what they put on that bar.
And if you're Jamie Simmons and knowing you're the return champ and you've got Elliot Simmons in your corner, it is going to be an important weight to hit for the 7 reps.
Got a lot of different strategies in play going on here. The 107.5 was the score to beat. Lacey McKenzie went for 110. Syria Meha went for 102.5, but something just happened there to her. And as far as what we see on the board, Astrid Tind is showing 47.5, and this might be a tactical decision for Tind.
So Meha not exactly sure what's happened there, but not ideal for our 2nd place podium getter from 2025, Syria Meha, the 102.5. "15 seconds remain." This time has ticked away very quickly.
And that was an entry error for Astrid Tind. It just ticked up to 102.5. We didn't get a chance to see her there, but it seemed unusual that she would go for such a low number. She did not, in fact. She's got a weightlifting background, so I thought she'd be around 100 kilos, and sure enough, she was.
Jess Howell getting her load done at 75 kilos as well. Tick that box. She is going to move on.
Well, in terms of that front squat, it's going to immediately impact the leaderboard in subtle ways.
All right, let's break down exactly what we've just seen with Lauren and Kate.
Yeah, I think a lot of the focus there was on Syria Meha. Clearly something happened, Kate, in her 102.5 attempt. That's really tough.
It's absolutely heartbreaking to see when you've come through 2 days of competition, you're in the last stretch, and then something obviously like that has not gone right. And yeah, it's absolutely heartbreaking for her, and you could see how upset she was too.
Lacey McKenzie, though, 110 kilos. To beat it was 107. She certainly topped that with 2.5. But listen, she's already said that the pull-ups are going to be a problem for her. So did she go into that potentially with a little bit of damage limitation in mind, willing to take a risk?
I think so, actually, because she has the advantage of being in this last heat. She's seen what everyone else can do. She's seen the top score of the day. Obviously, she doesn't know what the girls in her heat are going to lift, but she can have a good guess and she'll know that she'll be right up there. Maybe she's, you know, if she can win this event, then it doesn't matter if she takes a little bit more of a hit in the pull-ups.
Astrid Tin, though, she came into this block of 4 workouts leading the overall. She very much needed to push on, and with 102.5, that places her very nicely. As Brian said, though, every little movement at this stage could change that. In terms of just focus and dialing down, how would you be approaching this next 30 minutes of action?
I would just be making sure, like Ed touched on it earlier, your recovery in between each of the events. So maybe not lying on the floor, maybe walking around a little bit, keeping your muscles moving, and just keeping focused. Hydrate the whole way through, and just lock your head in. Zone out if you need to, put your music on in between. Yeah.
I have no doubt that Jamie Simmons is going to be looking forward to this portion of the test. We are going to find out exactly what's going on the floor with Mike Bourne.
Yeah, so I was just speaking to the head judges then. I was down the other end as it happened, and Syria Meha put around about 102.5 on the bar, unracked the bar, stood there for around about 20, 25 seconds and didn't move. Did 1 rep. It was a tough rep. She got to the top, was re-holding, and then all of a sudden was pretty much like, I've not got this, and the bar went down. Obviously then, because she only did 1 rep, she hasn't met the minimum work requirement in the front squat, which means she cannot carry on with the rest of the competition. How that's going to impact her score, I don't know. Hopefully those guys in the studio will be able to explain that a little bit further.
Thank you, Mike. And tough going for Syria Miha, and what is going on? We don't know exactly what is going to happen, but we've got a massive shake-up coming for our second place getter from 2025 underway for workout number 6. It is the max pull-ups, and something that Jamie Simmons is going to be looking forward to. Emily DeRoy, after speaking to her after the swim early this morning, something that she was really looking forward to as well.
Yeah, and I mean, when something like that happens on the floor, that like the athletes have great awareness. They probably all saw that and saw her be removed, and they also have to recalibrate, block that out, and focus on the next task at hand. It can be a little bit jarring when you don't know what happened to a contender that was probably in your periphery as someone to watch over these 4 tests.
Simmons with just such a great resume right across her career.
And for such a long time. I mean, she first turned heads when she won the Open 10 years ago.
And then declined.
Well, she podiumed with CrossFit Yas that year. She made the games as an individual the following season. And she's been a name that you must take note of at every competition she's ever showed up to since then.
Jamie Simmons now 17 reps down already. The minute 10 down on the clock.
And we'll get to see here with that little chin extension, which we saw from Dana Paran. A little veteran move to get the chin above the bar without sacrificing the position of the lower body there. We already have seen a new score to beat on the front squats, or it's going to be a winning score for Lacey McKenzie. A great little foreshadowing for Mike to talk to her in the warm-up area. And when it comes to the pull-ups, 26 from Dana Paran is what we're looking at. Actually ran into Julia Blazowska. She's sitting in 3rd with 23. She got 7 no reps during the 3-minute interval. The strictness of the pull-up, a very high standard here. We're watching for the heels to make sure that they don't drift in front of the body. They must stay underneath, and you have to show control at the bottom before going back up.
I managed to catch up with Phil Hesketh during the break as well. And he mentioned about Mia's training and how she said she was just here for fun because she hasn't been training. He goes, he doesn't know how she's pulling out, what she's pulling out, because little Haley is up all night, every night, and falling asleep on her chest. So he goes, I don't know how she's done it, but it's been miraculous for Mia Hesketh to be where she is.
I mean, just adds to the resume of the most impressive group of people I know, moms.
Yes, they are. Jamie Simmons continues with 30 seconds remaining. She is going to put herself
Well, that's
in a
that's
great
the first
position.
place is what that is, because she's got 28 reps and no one else in this heat is going to touch her. 26 from Dana Pran was a score to beat. And those are the two women that we identified who were using that chin over bar technique, and it's resulted in first and second place scores.
Now, she would know that she needs to get that minimum, but she can't let Jessie Smith get any closer than she's getting.
Now, Jamie's got it locked up. Jessie hitting 26 there would actually put her into the tie for second, or 27. Either way, she's going to get second place points. And Jessie Smith is the athlete that was sort of in that second grouping that's starting to make a little bit of push here. She hit 100 kilos on the squat, which is exceptional. Second place on the pull-up. And I know that her and Chandler have been putting in the miles on the bike.
Our next workout completes. Workout number 6, our max pull-ups in 3 minutes. 2 more to come and a 20-minute bike erg test to test these athletes before we find the ultimate athletes. And let's see exactly what the studio team thinks of that one.
Oh, Jeremy, I just think Jamie Simmons is girl goals. I absolutely love her. She would have come into that, Ed, knowing that it was hers to lose. She won it last year. What different mentality must you have to do that and exceed when you're basically got a target on your back?
I think for Jamie, that doesn't faze her. She's been in this game for too long. She's been playing high-level sports before she got into the world of CrossFit. She does these things year in, year out. She's come back from massive, operations and injuries, multiple shoulder reconstructions, and she always seems to get back to that really high level of competing. So honestly, I think for her, this whole idea of having a target on her back and feeling pressure to repeat, I think it doesn't faze her at all. And again, she's out there stepping into the, got 3 events left on, massive competition, and she's still smiling. She's still having a laugh. She's so calculated. No reps, well, not from what we saw at least. So I just think that's just something that veterans who can stay in this game at the highest level for as long as they do, just very little phases them.
But it's also a compliment as well to have a target on your back.
Oh yeah.
Everyone's looking at you, so you can flip it on its head. As much as it may give you, it might give you sort of, well, just give you more confidence.
Yeah.
Confidence is what we need. Jamie Simmons, Mum Anita, Dad Michael, hopefully we'll be watching along. But yes, Ed, as you mentioned, Targo rugby player in a former life and now functional fitness elite athletes. And Simmons well in control, and a test she has completed before, and it's not a damper setting 10, so it's going to be way easier.
Yeah, and putting down 241 when it was at damper 10, which would be good enough for second from what we've seen so far. So she's absolutely going to be in the mix here, but she will not be the only one in this heat that's going to be threatening at least a second place position. Look at Astrid Tin's score on the board right there.
Ouchie. Emily DeRoy, 232 at Dubai Fitness Challenge. Lacey McKenzie at a 228 currently. 300 is epic. We thought Katie Healy's score was pretty good. This is going to be next level.
Yeah, and when I was mentioning there might be one athlete in this heat who could take down Katie Healy's score, it was Astrid Tin that came to mind. You see Reza Blinova also in the mix there. And Blinova needs to have a good performance here. She hasn't had a great start to this quadruplet here. If she can finish strong, there's a lot of points still up for grabs. But Astrid Tind comes from Denmark. And if you go to Copenhagen, you're more likely to see bikes on the road than cars on the road. They bike all the time there. It's their main, actually her and Victor, it's their main mode of transportation everywhere they go. And she's also 5'11". We talked about that the long legs and the big levers can be really advantageous. That's what we saw from the top athletes in the past. In terms of top-end potential for women here, we mentioned that Uda Lundekvam had won a DFC test at damper 10 at 287. Vor Thurman Moe, her training partner, logged a 301 in practice, but burned out in the last 3 minutes and faded fast when it came to the real thing. So 300 is not out of the realm of possibility if it's needed.
Tind now dropping to 279. Blanova, 273. So the battle with those two is going to be extremely interesting in the course of how it plays out over the next two workouts, and we find out who is going to be the ultimate athletes. Simmons looking to go back to back.
Well, and Jamie Simmons' score is going to be really what's going to be the telltale sign here. I mean, the worst that Astrid Tind is going to do on this is third place. I think it's more likely she'll finish first. And she's already given up points to Jamie on both the squat and the pull-up. The press is going to be tough. She's so tall, so she needs to maximize the points here relative to Jamie Simmons. And then Emily DeRoy, who's also in the mix in that 230, where there's going to be a lot of jostling for positions.
We are edging towards the end of day number 2 here at the Crucible. It is the finals from Abu Dhabi. Thank you for joining us wherever you are right around the world. We've got a global collection of athletes, especially in this heat. And a good range of athletes as well, some from strength backgrounds, cardio backgrounds, and functional fitness backgrounds. But let's head down to Jane Obaka, who is on the floor.
So I'm just watching Reza right now, and she is holding over 90 RPM, which mathematically she is doing an absolutely fantastic job. And what we can see here is she has actually selected the lowest damper setting that we have seen yet today. So she's sitting closer to a 3 on that damper, which means that flywheel is moving a lot faster than most of the other athletes. And so from a mathematical perspective, what we expect to see over this 20 minutes is that she doesn't actually fatigue as much as those athletes that have that higher damper setting. So I definitely want to keep an eye on that RPM, staying nice and high. We want it over 85 because she's got that damper setting low. So let's watch and see how she goes.
Low damper setting is what I'm all about as well. Number 3 is where it's at. And Blanova at 264. And just behind Astrid Tind.
Yeah, not surprised to see Astrid drop back down. The 300 was probably, just getting the gears going and building a little bit of the buffer on the front end. She definitely will know what score was put up previously, 265 by Katie Healy, and my guess is that her intent here is to beat that by as little as possible.
The average for our top 10 so far, 220.9, so just under that 221. Healy, absolute outlier, 265, and that is going to be your best score to beat at the top left in the red and white.
We'll keep an eye on Astrid and Reza for sure because they're bracketing that 265. But look at that: Mackenzie 230, Simmons 228, Smith 231, DeRoy 232, Towle 227. It's 5 average watts between the rest of the field, and we have 3 other scores in between 232 and 237 from the previous heat. We expect a tick up of about 5 from where they settle in towards the end. So all 5 of those women, plus the 3 from the previous heat, are going to be battling for precious points on this bike.
Not just battling for points, battling for big US dollars coming their way.
Yeah, we talked about the prize purse earlier, and once you get to the top 10, it goes up by 1,000 until you get to the top 5, where it starts going up by 10,000, ultimately culminating in 50,000 for the ultimate champion. And 10,000 points per placement in the top 5 is a big deal. There's not even that many competitions around the world that have a $10,000 first place payout as it is, and you can get that for 5th place here.
Our leader continuing, Astrid Tind 266, just dropping a little. Reza Blanova 262, now dropping to 261.
And those are the 2 athletes with the highest RPMs, both hovering around at 90 or so. It's almost as if Jane knows what she's talking about out there.
Almost. Astrid Tind 266, still leading, but still a long way to go.
Yeah, this is really where you're just settling in and trying to get comfortable. I know it sounds a little bit ridiculous, but there is a place where you can get to where you understand the legs are going to be feeling it. You can see how she's breathing here. It's not an emphatic breathing, but it's consistent, and she's keeping the blood circulating through the legs by doing that.
And speaking to Jane over the last couple of days, it's not just jumping on the bike and going. There are so many different aspects to what you have to know going into a test like this. For more on that, let's head down to Jane on the floor.
So we heard from our friend Mike Bourne when he was talking to Julia during the strict press on the last heat, how important it is for these athletes to have a little bit of freshness in their shoulders going into that strict press. So one thing I want to draw attention to is how much stress is going through the upper body when these athletes are on the bike. So usually on the bike, we don't actually want any stress going through our upper body. We want all the power going through our legs, but especially in this competition where they have to get straight off this bike and perform a 5 RM strict press, the upper body and the relaxation you can create through that upper body is super, super important.
Thank you, Jane. 12 minutes is going to be what is left for these athletes. Their final tests coming up, workout 7 and 8. 20 minutes on the bike, 15 minutes on the strict press to finish off the female side of competition. Astrid Tind still maintaining that 266. Rosa Blanova just dropping to that 258.
Yeah, and the battle behind them is really tightening up. We have Jessie Smith here on screen, and we mentioned that she's been, you know, if you follow her and Chandler on Instagram, you'll see that they've been putting in tons of circuit trainings, including bikes with the Mark John crew over there in the UK over the last 6 months. And Jessie Smith right here, you know, you can tell that she's not comfortable, but I think she also understands that this is where I need to be right now because she has put herself firmly in the conversation for those top 5 positions.
Oh, uncomfortable. You've got to get to that position if you're going to succeed. Jessie Smith, one of the nicest humans on the planet. We had the chance to catch up with her yesterday.
Being at the Crucible right now is a really cool experience. This is my first time out in Dubai, Abu Dhabi, and the UAE. So I'm very excited to meet everyone, try some new foods, be in a different area than I've ever gotten to experience. The training coming up to this event has been really good, so I'm excited to see how it plays out and how I'm able to finish and showcase everything I've worked for in the last few months. The reason I continue to put myself through competitions year after year is a bit silly, but I honestly really like it. I've been competing and doing CrossFit and fitness related things now for about 13 years, and every time I finish a competition, I'm just filled with so much more joy than I had going into it. I get to meet fellow competitors and spectators who provide me with so much energy and just life to want to be here. I don't think there's ever a time that I cross the finish line and sure, maybe it doesn't go exactly the way you want it to every time, but the fact that we get to be out here and we have the opportunity to do this is just mind-boggling and very cool. So I try not to take that for granted at any point. I think if I came here and I said I didn't want to win, that would be insane. So I'm definitely here to, like I said, hopefully get somewhere to the top. If I can win, I would be immensely proud of myself, and I don't think it's out of reach. And so I think if I can do everything that I've trained to do at this point, I should do very well. But either way, I'm going to be proud of putting 100% effort onto the floor. My plan for the bike workout, every time I start this bike workout, I go out way too hot for the first 5 minutes and then usually regret that for the next 5 minutes and then try to hold on for dear life for the next 10 minutes. So my plan when I actually do this workout is that I hopefully maintain a consistent pace for 20 minutes and I don't fluctuate too much, but what I say and what I do never usually line up. So future Jessie, as you're watching this, don't be stupid, please.
Jessie, hate to break it to you. You're in that uncomfortable space already and you've still got 9 minutes left. But great insight into the mind of Jessie Smith, traveling the world, living in London for the last 6 months, now coming here, moving back to the US, to Atlanta, Georgia, via Spain on the way back for a little bit of rest and recovery with husband Chandler. But great to have them here.
Yeah, great to have them anywhere. They're just incredible people.
Yes.
And it's also cool that they've taken it upon themselves to go out and meet different communities, compete in different areas. And unlike some of the other athletes who are trying to avoid foods for risk of not feeling great, they want to embrace the totality of the culture while they're here.
We have got 8 minutes left of our FTP tests on the Concept 2 bike erg. And Astrid Tind still maintaining, increasing in fact to 268. Blanova just dropping a little bit more back to 255.
Well, and it's actually Blanova who I think is in kind of a sweet spot here. She realizes that I think Healy and Tind are out of touch. She's 18 average watts clear of the current score to beat, and no one else in this heat is threatening even that right now. So she's got a lot of room to work with. Everyone behind her, starting with Mackenzie at 233 and then dropping down to Jessie Smith at 227, those are the athletes where the precious points that could translate to those precious payouts are really up for grabs in these last 7 minutes. I'm not sure how aware of it they are. Emily DeRoy and Jessie Smith have been exchanging blows so far, a second and a ninth, an eighth and a second. So this could end up being a big difference for them on the leaderboard.
DeRoy currently at 227 level with Jessie Smith and getting a 232. The Bike Fitness Challenge 2 years ago. Got to be a lot easier, but it looks as though her damper setting is a little bit higher than normal. But let's head down to Jane.
So something that's often discussed when it comes to the ergs is size of the athlete and build of the athlete. And while this is definitely part of the discussion, something we need to understand is it's not just because of size that athletes are really good at this. And so a lot of people can think, I need to be tall, I need to have long femurs, I need to have all of these things. But what is even more important than that is actually just the capacity of the athlete and also the body position on the bike. So we can see Jamie Simmons today. She's not the biggest athlete in the field and she's absolutely hitting unbelievable watts. So I want people to understand that every single size of every single athlete here can be exceptional, and there's things that they want to take into account sooner. So position on the bike, leg speed, damper setting, and then engine capacity.
And Lacey McKenzie here has been the one that's slowly ticking up and up. 234 is what she's sitting at right now. We've seen a pretty normal balance throughout the first 3 heats that if you do well on the front squat, you also do well on the bike. Ida Konkinen, 2nd and 4th. Taylor Howe, 5th and 3rd. Well, Lacey McKenzie had the top score on the front squat so far and currently sitting with what would be the 6th best overall score, but 2 previous athletes are within 2 average watts of her right now.
Lacey McKenzie getting through the battle, which was workout 6, the strict pull-ups, and getting onto something a little bit more comfortable and easing off on those elbows. Another one of athletes from the UK based here in the Middle East.
Well, you mentioned the elbows. I mean, she managed a top 10 finish on the pull-ups despite that. And Lacey McKenzie, for me, is the athlete who has performed at a higher level relative to what I was expecting to start this weekend than anyone else in the women's field so far. And, you know, as the workouts go on, when you see an athlete that you maybe haven't seen in the top heat contending like this before, you expect them to drop off, and that has absolutely not been the case for Lacey.
As we edge towards our final quarter, the final 5 minutes coming up for workout number 7. 2 important factors after speaking to Jane Urbacher earlier on about what these athletes are going to be focusing on. And it's going to be their average pace and it's going to be their intensity level. What can they maintain? What can they do at the back end?
And it's really a gut check here. I mean, what we've seen from a majority of the field is that within the 15 minutes, at some point you start to feel good enough to get close to a number that you're happy with on the strict press. So if the women have been paying attention or able to pay attention or talk to some of the other athletes previously, I think that it is worth it to gamble on the last 2 minutes here and go for it and try to pick someone off if they're close to you in your heat or if you know there's a score from a previous heat, and trust that you'll be able to recover and do a good effort on the strict press either way.
Astrid Tind increasing her average wattage to 275 ahead of Katie Healy, which is our best wattage to beat, and top left of your screen.
Well, and they probably don't know it out there, but the whole heat is actually, pulling ahead of Jamie Simmons here. She's at 221. It's back of the heat. That means she's going to give away 7 spots. That's also giving away 4 previous positions. Jamie Simmons came out with a very nice squat and obviously won the pull-ups. So someone like Astrid Tind taking a first here relative to Jamie's 14th or something like that, it's going to be another big swing on the leaderboard.
One more workout to come. The 15-minute time frame for 5 strict press following the 20-minute FTP bike erg test. For max wattage, average wattage. Talking about max wattage, Astrid Tind coming out of the gates hot, well over 300.
Yeah, pushing it up there aggressively to start, but settling back into about that upper 260 range, and she's been able to maintain that. And if you watch her here, what I expected to see from her is what we're seeing. This looks like it's an effort, but it's kind of like Miko Lilliorg in the pool. It's not easy, but it is nice. She's comfortable, she's relaxed, she knows what she's doing, she's in control, and having the best score so far.
Now, bike setup, one of the important factors. Blanova currently sitting in second, 2.55. She's been steady as well. And that head bobbing back and forth and just urging that time to go past quicker. We've only got 2.5 minutes left.
Yeah, and Blanova here, like I said, she's in that sweet spot. She's not going to track down the top 2 scores, but she's well clear of the rest of the division, not just the heat. So she's putting in a good effort here, but overall, this should just be a coasting in of 3rd place for her. Accept it for what it is and get ready for a press, which is arguably the best thing for her of the whole weekend.
We've spoken about different positions on the bike, and Jane mentioned it as well. There's been some shoulder fatigue coming in and how far forward you're leaning because that fatigue level is so high. Jamie Simmons, and it looks as though those handlebars are way too far away from her because she has got that lean forward and you're not propelling yourself anywhere.
I mean, it really looks like she's like putting a lot of weight into the wrist and the shoulders there too. Not maybe the most comfortable position as we saw with Astrid Tind. I'm just watching down there in lane 7 and 8. They're still within 1 average watt of each other, Jessie Smith and Emily DeRoy, and I think that whichever one of them is able to take the point from the other one there could end up being a spot on the leaderboard.
We are 1 minute away from finishing workout number 7. This is the FTP Bike Erg test. 1 workout remains to find the ultimate athletes. Our females will be crowned first. We'll know exactly what is happening once we get our provisional results in the leaderboard. We cast our attention to the males.
Well, and of course we got Mike Halpin in the back crunching all the numbers and sorting everything out in a very unique style of test where there's constantly changes to the leaderboard as they go from squat to pull-up to bike. But what we see in this final heat here, and I love to see this, is Lacey McKenzie's going to take the win on the front squat. Jamie Simmons takes the win on the pull-up. Astrid Tind's going to take the win on the bike. And I'm curious to see who it's going to be. I think it might be Raisa Blanova. But if we can go 4 for 4 with 4 different athletes in the final heat taking the win, just to give an expression of how diverse this field is and this test is.
Loving it. Emily DeRoy jumping ahead of Jessie Smith by 2. But it is going to be Raisa Blanova to finish second behind Astrid Tind, 2.74 to finish. Wow. Incredible performance. And as you mentioned, that jumble of wins right across 4 different athletes.
Yeah, and Astrid, you know, we saw her break onto the scene in the elite individual division at Wadapalooza, where she won a workout that had beach running and biking in it. Well, she won the run and the bike this weekend. So clearly 2 things that she's elite.
Great stuff going on. Leaderboard shake-up coming. Lauren Smith, good luck with that one.
Absolutely a little bit of a shake-up coming, but it's all going to come down to the final strict press. This is our final heat of women, the final opportunity to score points and attack the top of that leaderboard. One thing to bear in mind is Raisa Blanova beat everyone here in this heat last year in the strict press. Stats coming from our man Mike Halpin down on the floor. Someone would need to press over 52.5 kg to take the win over Paran and Campos. Now, last year, Racer hit a 50 kilo lift. So over the course of the year, a 2.5, is that plausible? I think possibly, yes. Kate, Ed, take me through that C2 bike and what we've got to look forward to.
Well, I believe the biggest difference was that the strict press did not come after a 20-minute bike.
That's very true.
So that's something we have to consider because that's going to massively influence the weight. However, something that is unique on the strict press, they do have 15 minutes. And what we have seen here is that 15 minutes for fit athletes, which these guys all are, when I say fit, I'm talking about aerobically fit, that is enough time to potentially fully recover the energy system needed for a heavy strict press. So we could still see those numbers being hit, but something that I think we have to consider when we look at the weights from last year.
Yeah, absolutely. And as our ladies are putting weights on their barbells, we can see the full workout results from the average watt test. And Astrid Tind really did put on a spectacular display there with 275 watts. Now that puts her in a great position to tackle Jamie Simmons as we head into the final workout. These two will be two of the athletes to watch.
And the leaderboard is really taking shape as they work through these. We've got an excellent team in the back end that's keeping us up to date on the overalls as they move up. And you see Ray Siblinova and Lacey McKenzie with good efforts there that keeps them within touching distance of critical spots on the leaderboard. With one workout to go, Jamie Simmons has about a 30-point lead over Emily DeRoy. Emily DeRoy is about 10 points clear of Astrid Tind. It's a 25-point drop to Lacey McKenzie, who's got 5 points over Jessie Smith. Ray Siblinova will need a big jump. She's about 50 points out of those top 5 spots, those precious top 5 positions.
It is all going to come down to the final 12 minutes now. 3 minutes without a whole lot happening on the floor.
And as we know that there's so much on the line here, I just want to review the standards that we're going to be looking for here. It looks like Astrid Tind is going to take an early lift, and we'll get to see this. So we cannot lean back in the shoulders at all. The head can move out of the way, of course. The finishing position, as she's beautifully demonstrating there, with wrists over shoulders, and you must reestablish control below the chin before going into a second rep. After 5 reps, you must bring it back down and rack it in the rack before the full set will count. You can do multiple attempts here, and you can change the weights, but it must be 5 consecutive good reps, meeting every aspect of the standard in order to log a score, as Astrid Tind just has done.
1 point to note, the jumps of weight as well is an important one.
2.5 kilos seems to be the minimum that you can change, and we've seen a massive pile up at 45 kilos. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 women so far hitting that. Only 5 women above that. So if you can get to 47.5, you're doing yourself a favor. 52.5, the heaviest we've seen so far.
And strict press, one of those movements you don't necessarily see in competition very often, and it's very hard, especially with different standards. But the judging team, the strict standards they've got here at the Crucible finals, they are nailing it.
I think it's one of the reasons that competition organizers are hesitant to program stuff like the strict pull-up and the strict press, the strict dip, is because of the judging standards. What the Crucible team has done here has created a scenario where there's a lot of actually local judges in the UAE that are able to come in multiple weekends, go through training regimens, and get well up to speed so that they can apply these standards uniformly across the divisions and the heats.
Jamie Simmons successful with that, and a little bit wider with her stance. I'm not sure if that was deliberate or not. Normally used to seeing those feet shuffle under those shoulders a little bit more. That was more of a squatting stance from Jamie Simmons. Maybe a little bit of leg fatigue, maybe ease off on the leg fatigue to enable that barbell to get overhead. We'll have to wait and see what happens as she progresses through this 15 minutes.
Well, Ed also mentioned, you know, she's been around forever. She's been through the ringer, she's been through every competition, and she knows herself so well. So while we might look and say, that's not how I would bike, that's not how I would press, that's how Jamie does it. And the way Jamie does it, she's been essentially unbeatable in the UAE, and she has the lead right now, so I'm definitely not going to be questioning her methods.
No, absolutely not. Jamie, get back to work.
Now, Ray Siblinova put the top score on the board, 42.5. As soon as she racked that bar, her judge was talking to her. I think if I could understand there, she was saying, you're right on the edge. Any further deviation, same thing here. This communication, saying you're pushing it, and anything else won't count.
One thing the Crucible has done extremely well is communication between judge and athlete and head judge.
Yeah, that goes back to just planning and saying, okay, we want to do it this way, and in order to do it this way, we need to take these steps to prepare. And so from the top down, from the organizer to the head judge to the 56 judges that are here volunteering this weekend, and then in communicating to the athletes, they have a head judge brief, an opportunity to ask questions with their judge, and cues on the scorecard for both athlete and judge to make sure everyone knows exactly what's expected.
Simmons again continuing with that wider stance, and it is working for her. 42.5 successful now for Jamie Simmons. $47.5 seems to be the weight for Planova and Tind. DeRoy, 50 kilos in the books. That is a good lift from her.
Yeah, we missed a couple really critical lifts there. Astrid Tind putting 47.5, and again, she's chasing Emily DeRoy. We've got to see what happens there because the difference between second and third on the leaderboard, that was $10,000, is going to come down to whether Tind can best Roy on this lift or not.
Tind continuing to load her barbell. Jamie Simmons, she takes 8th or better in this press. She takes the win for the second time in 2 years.
A little bit further down, we see Jessie Smith at 45, but Lacey McKenzie only able to get 37.5 right now. If Jessie could usurp her on the leaderboard, that's another $10,000 jump as she would move into the 4th place position. So big implications across the heat here.
Jessie Smith getting to work. Emily DeRoy just sitting to the back, watching along what is happening.
And I think the lean back here is going to be...
Yeah, too much.
Yeah, you saw the head judge coming over, and I think she got a no rep on the rep before that also. So Jessie's going to have to recalibrate. She's got plenty of time, but she needs to dial it in.
So Jamie finishes 9th here, and Emily DeRoy wins this. This is going to get a little bit crazy because they're going to be tied on points. And the tiebreak is that run from yesterday afternoon.
Well, and you know, Emily DeRoy is going to have the opportunity because she's got 50 already. She's got 6.5 minutes left. But like we mentioned, 5 kilos doesn't look like a lot on paper. But my goodness, is it a lot when you're talking about a 5-rep max strict press.
The intensity level from the 20-minute bike erg test, and we lower it down for intensity with the barbell, but the intensity of the competition increases and things getting very tight. Let's head down to Mike on the floor.
Yeah, I just spoke to Emily DeRoy. She turned around and had a little chat with me. She's hit 50 so far. She's feeling good, and that she's got at least another 2 attempts in her yet, obviously barring any no reps. I just also wanted to note on the floor, there's actually quite a discrepancy in anatomy on the floor at the moment. There's a few short stature athletes and a few much longer athletes, and the disadvantage of those longer athletes having to extend that a little bit further without leaning back on this strict press makes it very, very difficult.
Tind continues at the bottom of the screen. Simmons gets to work at the top left.
And these 3 lifts we see here on the screen could end up being the difference between first, second, and third in some order. So massive implications right here in front of you.
DeRoy, successful 52.5. And 1 lift left.
Tind racked the bar. I think she's in at 50. And did Simmons get that? If Simmons just got that at 47.5, it might be out of reach because she needs to be 9th or better. She would have the tiebreak on that run. And 47.5 at this moment puts her in a tie for 9th. This is...
Oh, it's going to be a crazy
everything we're
finish.
saying here, please consider it provisional because the margins are as small as we could ever be. And we talked all weekend about the small things that athletes do, all these little nuances. And at the end of the day, this could literally come down to a tiebreak.
Brian, that's why we've got a studio team to break this down. 4.5 minutes remain.
Well, we talked about 45 being that threshold, and we've got over half of this heat above it. Reza Blinova here with another effort. And she's got a chance to move up the leaderboard here as well if she can get into this tie for the lead. 4.5.
That's going to be tough.
How many times have we seen it?
So many. Emily DeRoy, 52.5 kilos. Blanova going for 52.5 as well.
And I think Astrid Tind may have actually gotten 4.5, not gotten that 50 on the board. It popped up for a second, but it's back down to 47.5.
An attempt and gone back to 0. Emily DeRoy with a chance to take the outright lead. Talk about propelling yourself up leaderboards. Astrid Tind attempting 50. This is an important lift.
So, you know, DeRoy is in a tie for first right now. And no one else has 55 on the board, so unless someone does that, she doesn't actually need any more. It's just going to come down to where Jamie ends up.
Correct. Paran, Campos, both with 52.5. And Emily DeRoy matching that already with still 3 minutes. No wonder she was looking forward to this one.
Well, and that ability to outlast Jessie Smith on the bike and steal a placement there. You know, it's these little opportunities to push against one person in one workout that can add up over a weekend.
47.5 kilos. Placement of 5th, which would mean Simmons would end up provisionally on 777 points. 52.5 for DeRoy would mean 765. So DeRoy needs to go to 55 and take...
Well, I don't think she can get any more points. She's already maxed out at tied for first. So it seems like Jamie Simmons has done enough. A little oceanic battle.
Oh, I love it. It's so good. We call it the Anzac battle, Australia, New Zealand. Blanova.
I'm happy to call it that, Anzac battle. Love it.
Australia and New Zealand Army Corps battling at Gallipoli.
Third attempt at 50 here for Astrid Tind. She only did like 1.5 reps and she just decided to re-rack it 90 seconds later and she's got the bar back up. This is going to be her last attempt.
Oh, 1 rep remaining. Astrid Tind, can she get this final rep? Oh, again, 4.5 reps.
Well, and you see that she was starting to lean back. She knows she can't. If she were allowed to, she may be able to finish it, but that's pretty much the breaking point that we've seen for, it feels like, half the women so far.
DeRoy for the outright win for the strict press 5RM.
Well, and interesting here, you know, she's already maxed out her points, but the women she's tied with, including Racea Blinova, don't want her to hit this because they want to take those 100 points with them as well.
DeRoy 55 and the win.
Yeah, no regard for the other women's feelings.
None whatsoever. But
that is an impressive press.
Very much so.
And she was in that fight on the bike. So we, like, as I talked about, these athletes are good enough to push it deep in that 20-minute effort, recover, and also excel at a strength endurance test, really.
The final minute incoming. DeRoy taking the outright lead on the final workout of the Crucible finals. The leaderboard shake-up is going to be epic.
Yeah,
where are they going to sit for the final 30 seconds? What can the ladies in the final heat of the day manage to get done? Blanova going again, 3 reps in at 52.5. Tind, 2 reps in at 50. Jamie Simmons, 1 rep to go at 50 kilos. It doesn't look like she's managed to get it. But we're going to high-five Jessie Smith anyway.
Teammates 6 weeks ago, competitors this week, but we saw them talking on the floor after yesterday, and they're doing the same here. It's really great to see this from the athletes all weekend long. Just the maximal effort outputs and the respect for each other when it's all said and done.
So that lift from Emily DeRoy may shake things up a little bit more than we thought, and obviously everything provincial until our studio team get to work and crunch some numbers for us. But Jamie Simmons, are we going to see a back-to-back champ here at the Crucible?
Well, if she's able to do it, it'll be 4 consecutive wins in Abu Dhabi for her. UAE Storm Games defending champion twice over as well.
It's like she's almost a local.
I told you, if you want to come to the UAE, you better be prepared to take down Jamie Simmons.
Impressive performance from our final heats. And our women now are complete with our final 4 workouts of the Crucible finals. Smiles all round now that the ladies are finished. There was not too many smiles coming off that second last workout, the 20-minute bike erg FTP test.
Well, hey, Astrid Tind is trying to push into the individual fields. Her and Victor Munter train relentlessly, and she's gotten good enough that she feels she can do it. They saw this competition pop up a couple weeks ago. They reached out, they registered, they came here, and she's going to be taking home a significant payday. So she absolutely deserves to be smiling like that.
Doesn't she what? Just how, what a performance from her this weekend as well. The 2024 champ of the Crucible.
Yeah, we didn't talk about her too much during this because she wasn't in that podium battle, but incredible this morning, and just tremendous respect for the consistency to put herself in this top heat and in the fight.
And I love the balance of athlete that comes into the Crucible and where they can excel and where they know they've got to do some work if they want to go and do that work.
It's so unique. We've talked about the variety of disciplines they come from, and I think there's probably a lot of people watching that are thinking, maybe I could do this competition next year.
Yes, you can.